Hello, my fellow Westorians. We are back with our monthly Tuesday live streams every 6 o'clock. Once every Tuesday at the beginning of the month.
Every 6/12.
Every 6/12 in this case. So we start a video every 6/12. Yeah. So it is the end of what we refer to as con season. It ended with a bang, more cons than usual. We usually just have a few we go to once a month or so during the sort of spring, summer, beginning of fall months. But this time we went to Worldcon as well as Titancon, as well as a special event in between the two that involved 12 days in Ireland. And we topped that off by returning to our hometown of Atlanta and spending a couple days at DragonCon, which is the local con here. So we have stories. We have lots of stories. We will, of course, have stories from many people we met / knew already, but hadn't met in person, like lots of fun Euro people. And some of them are content creators that y'all know. Some of them are friends of the community. Some are just cool people. But the most important content creator of all, if you can call him that, George R. R. Martin himself, is a big part of this episode. He was at all these events, not DragonCon, but all these other events in Europe. And we got to hang out with him both in a professional and just kind of hanging out at lunch situation. And with Ashea and myself on this 12-day journey was this person you see to my right, Christina.
Yes.
Hey there.
Yeah, you probably have seen me in videos with Aziz.
That's right. You've been in lots of our social media.
Yes, trolling you.
And this the way we're sitting is really familiar.
I know. Honestly, it's like got me prepared. So I drove us all around Ireland on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
So I'm used to Aziz being to my left. He was not the best navigator, so I ended up just taking duct tape and taping my phone to the windshield. But
yeah, I'm not the best navigator, but I did a pretty good job of taking what we call oh shit videos. You know, when you're like, oh my god, look how narrow these roads are. Not only are we on the wrong side of the road, but the roads are really narrow and the cars are tiny, except when they're not, and that it makes you go, it makes you clench and go,
How many of our listeners are you guys pissing off right now with all this wrong side of the road business?
It is wrong.
Okay, we call it unfamiliar side of the road. Other side of the road. Different.
Unauthorized. We were unauthorized to be on that side of the road.
Occasionally we were actually on the wrong side of the road because we thought it was the right side. But you're supposed to be on the left side.
Yeah, I was the one who did that. I did it twice, once in downtown Galway and another time right outside of Castle Ward. And yeah, but it's always when you're turning around, you're like, I always was like, turn right, but stay left, stay left.
It's like a mantra. Left side of the road, left side of the road.
Okay, I remember.
So you've had a kind of a rapid succession of coming into the fandom and going to conventions and then
Yes, I've had a swift rise to power. You could call it that. Yes. Well, I used to be a lurker, so I was like queen of the lurkers, and I would lurk for I don't know, like 8 years, and then one day I went on Twitteros. Started doing statistics for the Davos Fingers bracket and somehow met Kyle Ross or KW Dent.
KW Dent.
Yeah, KW Dent. I met him and we started a little season 8 podcast about doing statistics and survey research, which is what I do professionally. And then he invited me to go to Ice and Fire Con in Ohio, and that was in April, the end of April, and that was my first con, and now I'm at the end of my 5th con. And it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been fun. The fandom kind of works that way. You know, there's all these things to do. There's more. It seems like there's more. The conventions kind of grow a little bit. Each of the conventions that have been around a while have gotten a little bit bigger. Some of the other conventions that have already been around have added more and more Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire content. And yeah, that's just the kind of community we have. So
Christina, she was going to so many cons this year that she even made an Instagram for it, a game of cons.
Yes,
which is a great little chronicle of our trip, I think.
Yes.
So I would recommend checking that out.
Yeah, Game of Cons on Instagram. Also, Ashea Tara is hers, and I'm Azizel Fretz, A-Z-I-Z-A-L
I can't believe you don't know how to
Fretz.
say my middle name. It's Tara.
Ashea Tara. Well, excuse me.
Oh, that's your middle. Oh,
That's where that
wow.
comes from.
Yeah, it's like you learn so much about people. I learned Ashea's mysterious last name. I was like, I don't know your. You don't know people's last names. In the
Sometimes
fandom.
they stay hidden.
Yeah, that's good though.
So we have a lot of
Yes.
other photos and videos that aren't going to make it into this video because there's just so many. We do have several that we've selected for this, and they should be fun, and you guys will enjoy them. But there's a lot of other ones. If you want more of our photos and videos that we took during the trips, follow those accounts we just named.
Can
also
I show
go to our
a
Facebook
video
group.
of driving?
Let's start off with the driving video
Oh.
since we just talked about that. This is some
Yeah,
serious.
This
my
is
God.
along the coastline.
Well,
Christina and I.
Well, I do have to
ventured
say
out
this
alone.
was towards the end of the trip, so I was very well practiced at this point. It takes a lot of and actually our friend Avril said that I was very brave. Actually, every Irish person that I talked to that knew that I was driving, they just went up to me. They're like, "You're brave." So yes, you
I
have to be
agree.
brave.
All right, here's the video.
So you see how terrifying that is, right? Even though that was, a little sped up.
Yeah, slightly.
Still.
Just a little, just a little.
Still.
That's how I felt in the car. It was the essence of how terrified I was.
Yeah, honestly, the bravest position in the car is shotgun because you have no control and you're going to be the first person hit when you fly off the road.
I just kept leaning towards the middle constantly. I was just like, yeah. Yeah, I made the joke that we were all getting really good Kegel exercises because there's just so much clenching whenever you pass another car. Like, yeah.
I made another joke after he made that joke, which I cannot repeat.
So, in this episode, moving on.
Yes, moving
in this
on.
episode, there's lots of shout outs we have for different people we met throughout this. So, if you met us, we may mention your name throughout or at the end. And if we don't mention you, we apologize because there were so many of you. And it was amazing, and it was a blur, and we really haven't had time to totally, gestate and think about all these ideas. Gestate, boy, that was an interesting choice of word there. And I've only really been home at my own house here for about 3 days because I had to go to Florida almost as soon as we got back from Ireland, and then even with DragonCon and being here, yeah. So we haven't really had a lot of time to process. So this is still this is as much a blur for us as it might be for you.
Yeah, I haven't been home in like over a month. I don't even know where I live anymore.
Yeah, we're just kind of have her locked up here.
Yeah.
If she makes any sort of SOS gestures
send help,
on
guys.
the camera, they're jokes. They're
They're jokes.
they're jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, total jokes.
So so we'll have lots to talk about the filming locations as well. We visited a lot of those sites. We met people associated with the show. Of course, like I said, we met a lot of fandom people as well. And lots to say. Some thanks, of course, to our usual friends, our History of Westeros' first sword, Jeff Gnarly, the long snapper, and our Dragon Rider patron, Luis Telenis the Talon, King of Gogassos, Rider of Telarius, a red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of Midnight Black. Yeah. And we, of course, have a couple of super chats to start us off. Thank you to Thomas Pappas. $50 welcome back. We most appreciated. That'll be fueling our jet lagging coffee drinking for sure. And well, Shay doesn't drink coffee, but
Juice. Shaya likes juice.
I like juice. Sugar. Pure sugar. It gives you energy.
And fueling Ashea as well is Stephen Stark. It's been a while since it's been stated clearly, so I'll do it right now. Ashea is, was, and forevermore will be the best.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephen. Much appreciated. Yes.
I agree.
So we have, like I said, videos, photos, and stories to go, but real quick to let everybody know where we're at as far as our regular content. Like I said, this is the end of con season. Our schedules should stay very solid for several months. We don't have anything other than one very brief trip in October that will only move our schedule one day. We don't have anything planned until next April. Maybe something will come up, but convention schedules are made far in advance, so unlikely to be anything that is more than a day or two delay on things. So we'll be very solid for a long time. Valor Reedus is back on schedule Sunday, September 8th at the usual time of 3. That'll be the second to last A Game of Thrones episode. The final one will be the week after, and then the week after that will be a Game of Thrones wrap-up Q&A featuring Lady Gwyn and Sir Buckley. That should be good stuff. And then we'll start on Clash of Kings right after that. Upcoming scripted episodes include House Blackwood, Lomas Longstrider, and with Radio Westeros, Dance of the Dragons Part 2. And now that we don't have con panels to prepare for and there's no travel and all that, we will be able to return a large amount of our focus on that. So it'll be kind of split between that and Valar Rereadus, and the content will keep rolling. So like I said, our travel schedule for Ireland was about 12 days. We got there, Christina and Ashay and I got there all around the same time. Ashay and I flew together. Christina was basically there like an hour before us.
Yeah.
It was really nicely timed. Couldn't be better. So we spent about 5 days in Dublin, roughly. It was like more nights than days. We got there at night. 1 day in Galway, 6 days in Belfast, including Castle Ward event in between that and other filming locations throughout. Ireland is not very big. It's if it were a U.S. state, it would be the size of Maine, or about the size of Maine, so it would be the 39th largest state in the U.S., which just not only tells you a lot about how important Irish culture is, because it's a small place that's had a huge influence on so many things, but also just puts in perspective that the U.S. is gigantic.
Yes.
But it's not even, and population-wise, Ireland would be 48th out of the 50 states in the U.S.
Well, to drive across, because we did drive across twice.
Yeah.
It's about like 4.5 hours of clenched driving.
Feels like longer.
Yeah, it really does.
Not just because of the scariness, but because it's beautiful. That's the other thing about it. Though it's, doesn't have a ton of people or isn't very large, those obviously aren't bad things. They're just things. As far as good things, as far as natural beauty goes, it would be near the top of the list if it was a U.S. state. And that is not only just because of the greens and the hills that you hear about, and kind of Ireland's known for that, but the trees and the cliffs.
Yeah, the cliffs.
The cliffs
really.
were really just unbelievable. And this is part where we're going to start talking about it.
I love the city architecture. Personally.
Yeah, that too. You got ancient buildings there. I mean, that's one thing about the U.S. We don't have buildings older than 200 some years here. I mean, there's no stone structures much older than that anywhere in this entire continent. So it's really neat we're driving down the road and hey, look, 7th century church. What the hell? That's 1,400 years old, man. So yeah, you can't drive down the road and see that here. So that's really cool. Now, some of y'all out there live in countries that do have stuff like that as old, but we here in the U.S., nothing.
Yeah, that's definitely an American experience traveling abroad, as you see things that are very old. And
that's like mind-boggling when you think about it. You like touch a piece of stone and you're like, someone laid this, here over 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Wild.
We joke about that on the show 1,000 years ago because it's like the generic thing that you say, but we know.
Yeah, this is like a Melisandre structure.
And so, though it wasn't the first panel we attended, it was one of the panels that really explains a lot. It kind of sets the tone for this episode and this trip for us. And it was George and some other great people doing a panel on Irish influences. And one of the other panelists was Paris, his wife, and she has Irish heritage, and George himself does. He's of House Brady.
Yes.
George of House Brady. His family had a dock in New Jersey called Brady Dock, but during the Depression they lost it, and that's now City Dock, and that's, as you said,
I feel like they should give it back to him. They should give him back the dock.
At least name it George Dock or something.
George R.R. Dockin or something.
Dockin. They know how to rock.
Yeah, this is how we were driving around. George R.R. Dockin, like the whole time, just making puns, and Nishaya's like trying to sleep in the back.
That's their house motto, rockin' with Dockin.
Yeah.
So people think that Martin is the Irish name, and I admit I was one of those, but really it's not. Apparently he told, what was it, Massacola, I think it was?
Oh, yeah, it's
changed. It's like an Italian name.
Yeah,
really.
it was changed during the immigration.
Yeah, so his mother's side is the Brady, and his father's side is the Martin, and that's more Italian. But he identifies more with the Irish side. And
of course, if you guys watch that documentary about, George's genealogy that came out a year or two ago, it gets a lot into that sort of thing. I think he learned a lot that he didn't know.
Yeah.
That was like a surprise for him. He's like, oh, really? I'm not as Italian as I thought. And it was a really good panel, too, because they talked about, things that some of us have heard of, but maybe didn't get a lot of detail on, just how important Ireland is to storytelling traditions that have spread throughout the Western world. Part of it is related to the smallness of the place and the natural
Mhm.
beauty and the issues they've had in the past with the economy being bad. And go farther back, they've had issues like the potato famine and things like that, and the depression that brought so many immigrants to the U.S. in the first place. Related to that, we found out something really cool that started us off on Game of Thrones, right? We found out about the Good Friday Agreement, which was a peace accord in Ireland many years ago. And immediately after this was signed, the two leaders of each side flew to California to talk to HBO about filming Game of Thrones there. And what were some of the things they mentioned? Like you could be at a windswept cliff, and then 30 minutes later you could be at the site they used for the Dothraki Sea.
Yes, I know.
Were you surprised that the Dothraki Sea was there?
We actually, Shay and I drove through an area and we looked around and we're like, yeah, I see this now. But that's great. It's nice to have different, like, varying kind of landscapes all in one, easily, easy to navigate. Well, actually, it's very difficult to navigate this place. But
you might die.
Yeah,
somewhat.
Well, the people there.
Accessible.
Well, the Northern Irish people are a kind, welcoming people. We made lots of friends in Ireland too. Not even Northern Ireland, but all of Ireland.
The Southern Irish, they were mean to us.
No, Avril will be really mad at me.
Yeah, no, they were great.
Yeah, everyone is so kind and welcoming there.
Super nice. People just went out of their way to give us tour advice.
I had a funny experience where I was walking around in our Airbnb area in Dublin, and these three little girls came up to me and asked if I would take a picture of them with my DSLR camera, and then asked if I wanted to see their dance. And I did, and so they did a little choreographed dance for me. And I've never once in my life had children come up to me to talk to me in the U.S., just to have a conversation. They were asking me about myself and my life.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not like, kids are taught not to talk to strangers, even like cute younger women. You're not even that's like, maybe don't talk to her.
I had multiple groups of kids that just talk to me, but I don't know. I guess, Irish people are pretty outgoing, has been my experience.
Yeah, we had a lot of cab drivers, Uber or Free Now, there's a different services there, who I would almost always ask if they're from that town, whether it was Dublin or Belfast. And they would, almost all of them said yes, like they were born and raised there. There's a few exceptions. And we found out just how important Game of Thrones was to the economy. It's incredible. It's not just, we think of it as this big popular TV show, which of course it is. It's it's our fandom, it's all that. But yeah, it's like life to a lot of people there.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's something that I noticed too. Everyone has, at least all the Irish people that I met, and obviously I was at a Game of Thrones convention, so I might be biased, but no, but even like Uber drivers and everyone there, especially in Belfast, but even all around Ireland, everyone there has really embraced Game of Thrones, the show, the books, and just like the whole culture. And we're in line and we saw like Andy the extra there. He was in line at the George signing, getting his coat signed. Yeah. And we met so many great, like Martin we met, who was an extra on the show, and just so many.
We met Robert Brown.
Yes, Robert Brown. Of course.
Also an extra. Yeah, there's just lots
There's
of
so
extras,
many people I know.
That's where they live and work.
Yeah, there's so many extras at the parties, at the events, and people have just really embraced, the Irish people have really embraced Game of Thrones into their culture almost.
It's had a big effect on the beards of Ireland.
Yes. All the women say that. They said, I guess some women were mad about all the long beards that their boyfriends had, and that, I'll cut it, honey, and it's like 8 years later and it's still going strong.
It's like, no, I want to be a Stark. Yes. Wait till the show's over, then I'll cut it, and they're still not.
Yeah, all the men there look like Northerners, which I don't have a problem with that. So I don't see the problem.
So speaking of local economy, there's lots of just tourists, in addition to the filming locations, which of course are touring draws, there's just markers and tourist spots that are specifically Game of Thrones oriented. For example, there's these stained glass window exhibits around Belfast that are just incredible. And
We've got one. Aziz and Christina posed in front of one of our favorite ones.
I'm a perfect facsimile for the mountain.
Yeah. And I was giving my best. Cersei just got through her walk of shame, ready to just go in, grab a mimosa, and chill at the Red Keep.
Now, Dublin itself is going through these huge amounts of construction that isn't Game of Thrones related, but it is nice to see their economy having this big boost. Belfast, on the other hand, is a smaller place, did have a more direct boost from Game of Thrones because it's the central location for the filming. Of course, Game of Thrones is filmed all over the world, but the main location is Belfast. That's where basically the home base is. That's where a lot of the extras come from. Speaking of extras, we had an unusual encounter, and I say we, but it was separate. This is really cool. So I'm going back to Titancon. Now this is Belfast. We're talking about the second half of the trip because Belfast was the second weekend. The first weekend was Dublin. So this is the second weekend. Going back and forth between our Airbnb and the con. It's pretty close. It's only about like a €5-6 ride. Pound. £5.
Yes,
Euro
it's
in
different.
the south, pound in the north. Right. And my Uber driver is this pretty big person of color who's got an interesting accent that I didn't recognize, and we're chatting, and eventually, and of course it comes up why I'm there. I mentioned Game of Thrones. I mentioned George R. R. Martin is at this convention, and he's like, oh, that's very cool. I was just an extra on the new show. I'm like, oh, an extra on the Blood Moon Long Night show, you say? And and he shows me proof of it. He pulls out his phone. He's like, he's from Fiji, he says. And he pulls out his phone and shows me a newspaper article from Fiji that says local man in Thrones. And it's a picture of him. People are recognizing him. So I put my hand on his shoulder, reached for to shake his hand, and I stopped. I'm like, holy crap, this dude is huge. My hand on his shoulder. Like I couldn't wrap my hand around him. So I imagine I can kind of guess what kind of extra this guy was. Some sort of intimidating warrior type, maybe.
Yeah, what do you think that says about what Blood Moon could be about?
It's a good question.
From meeting him. I didn't meet him, but Aziz and Ashea both had rides.
Separately.
Yeah.
Separate rides.
So I told this story, and then 2 days later, Ashea is like, oh, I had that same driver.
Yeah. I mean, I knew instantly. I got into the car, and he was playing Polynesian music. And then I looked more closely at him, and I saw how jacked he was, like huge muscles. And I was like, I think you drove my boyfriend around. And he was like, oh, and he said Aziz's name, on Uber, what is his name is there. And so because he knew earlier that we were into Game of Thrones, he was like, oh, once you go to the exhibit, he gave me like this secret path on how we could go see the entrance to King's Landing. He was like trying to get us to, he was like, if you get there and someone tells you to leave, just pretend you don't speak English.
Just pretend we're German. Huh?
Yeah, he's like, go left at the sandbags.
So that was just really neat, just fun thing. I mean, that just also gives you an idea of the size of Belfast. It's a bustling town, but it's not huge. It's not, it's not Atlanta or something. So having the same Uber driver isn't too crazy, but it is probably the only Uber driver that we had twice. Or maybe we should notice because they weren't, some large dude from Fiji that kind of stands out a bit. And he told us that he was also Jane Goldman's driver when she was there. So that's really cool. He showed us a photo of him with Jane Goldman. So story checks out.
Yeah.
And that was just really awesome. That's a good example of local economy being impacted, a person specifically getting extra work because of Game of Thrones, and maybe quite a bit more work because, if they pick up this pilot, then, well, that's a lot more filming up there. So, as we know, there's a lot of people of color in the cast revealed so far for Blood Moon. Again, that's just a working title, but yet I guess we can add one more to the list because this guy, he was a really interesting looking dude. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the specifics of the panels and the conventions. We spent our first few days kind of catching up with a few people and going to some panels at Worldcon. One of the really fun moments we had was hearing George talking about meeting Paris.
Yeah, they just talked and went, they were talking about cons, which was great.
Yeah, right? Like talking about meeting and what cons were like in the 70s and how It was a little different. The feel was, a little different in a lot of these things. People behaved a little differently. And it's just interesting hearing about what...
I mean, it was the 70s.
It was the 70s.
So that tells you something about how things were different, both in that things were wilder and that the proportions of men to women were different. And you can imagine a few things from there.
One of the things that George pointed out, which is absolutely true, is that conventions were more of a rarity back then. So people would necessarily make more a big deal out of it because it was such a... it was uncommon or even rare. But nowadays, as he points out, there's, like almost every major city has a convention or two every year, even if they're not necessarily as broad as Worldcon, covering so many different things. Some of them are a little more focused. Like obviously we go to Game of Thrones only conventions, or there's comic only conventions, there's Harry Potter only convention, things like that. That was not a thing back then. You couldn't have a single fandom convention back then.
When's there going to be Con?
Yeah, Con, the convention of conventions.
I think that was what Dragon Con was, right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it kind of was. So Paris had a great quote here. She said, "We don't date. We go to conventions and see each other."
Yeah, I like that. Paris is amazing, by the way. I hadn't really heard her talk a lot before, and I had read some of George's Not a Blog posts about her and things like that, and actually just seeing her up there in person, I'm like, who cares about George? I'm going to I'm here for Paris.
She's not exaggerating too, because it's not infrequent that George gets asked questions that he's been asked before. Even a prepared interviewer can ask a question that's been asked before, just because he's been interviewed so many times. And we've been following this for a long time, so we've heard a lot of these questions before. So hearing from Paris was new. I mean, she's been, she goes to lots of conventions, as she said. She's been going to conventions since the 70s. But, she's obviously not as famous as her husband, so she hasn't been on as many panels. And that's something George pointed out too. Not only were conventions more rare, but how hard it is to get on a convention panel back then versus how hard it is now, which is not terribly hard now. But back then, what did he say? He said,
he said he had been to 6 or 7 Worldcons before they asked him to be on a panel.
He'd been published.
He was published. He had a Hugo.
He had won a Hugo before he had been on a panel.
And then he was on the Young Writers panel.
Yeah, so he's winning a Hugo and is on the Young Writers panel. It still wouldn't put him on with the big dogs or whatever. So that's really good.
Yeah, you had to pay your dues back then. Now if you just get up at 10 a.m., of course everybody dropped out of the panel and they're like, who wants to be on the panel?
So yes, it's definitely different back then. Another thing that's really different is the things you could get away with. That's one thing that was talking about people. Shea mentioned that people were wilder. It was also more possible to be wild because hotels were less savvy about what conventions do. Right now, for example, you try to book a hotel in a convention in a city that's convention savvy. Say Dragon Con again. This is a place we've been. Dragon Con's huge, so it's a good example. They have a lot of experience for that. They will police your room to make sure you're not stuffing 10 people in there. They're making sure they'll charge you extra. They will make sure you're not doing any of that. Meanwhile, in the 70s, George is talking about putting 12 to 15 people in a room, people sleeping in the bathtub, just grabbing a spot of floor. And George would talk about claiming, a corner and being really happy with having a corner on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, these people went to Woodstock, they know how to, they can handle things.
Yeah.
Which Dave told me he went, and we love Dave. Shout out to Dave.
Shout out to Dave Axler from the BWB. He met Paris before George. So there you go.
The year before, a very infamous story. This is when it was the 1974 Worldcon. This is when Dave met Paris. Paris and some other people decided to make another convention goer's dream come true.
I believe it was Joe Haldeman, I think.
Yeah, it was a very weird dream. I mean an actual dream. He was sleeping and had a dream of 2 girls wrestling in lime jello, and they decided to make it a reality.
And so they got apparently 100. Paris says she bought 147 boxes of lime jello, which she collected $1 from a bunch of different people, which, $1 in the 70s, you could probably buy 3 boxes of jello for that. And then they just used the ice from the hotel ice machine And
Which they said was a sacred, like they had to secure the ice machine. There was a whole other thing about that.
At conventions, oftentimes it's hard to get ice because there's so many other people on the floor trying to get ice from the ice machine.
I feel like after Dragon Con, I can see how this was like a mission, because I definitely had. I mean, all these conventions, like we've been on missions and like, how do we get to Castle Ward?
So now apparently Joe Haldeman is still receiving lime jello as presents. Even though...
Well, they made a huge bathtub of jello in his room. So he walks in his room to a huge bathtub of lime jello. And so every year people give him boxes of lime jello now.
Which he doesn't even like.
Yes.
He doesn't like lime jello, as Ashea reminded us.
Yeah.
It was just a dream. It wasn't like, oh, I dream like a daydream, like I want more. I want this. No, it was just he had this vision in his sleep.
I was going to say, someone said Blackwater Bay. Yes, maybe that was the inspiration for Blackwater Bay.
Lime jello.
So Paris has had a pretty big impact on a Game of Thrones, of course, not just being George's wife, but they've been together so long, and she is a very creative person in her own right, and they've been around each other so long. They've been close for so long, and little small things. This isn't something she told here, but it's just something that I was reminded of during the convention. And George once mentioned that she really likes Arya. Paris's favorite character is Arya, and so she's trying to get George to make sure Arya lives. So you would think that Arya has a better chance than most because the character your wife says make sure this one lives. That's kind of the inside track, You can't really get more inside track than the spouse. But she pushed the envelope a little more. George doesn't like to name his pets as much because attachment, etc. So Paris was like, this cat is named Arya. So makes George even more attached to Arya. So
they have a cat named Asha.
There you go. Asha, very good.
She's a killer, George has told us.
I love that expert level trolling though. Like that's what I feel like con life is all about. You're always making puns and like trolling your friends.
Yes, yes, exactly. That lime jello thing is very accurate to that. One of my other favorite stories that Paris and George shared was about how they first met.
Oh yeah,
it was really good. They decided, George and a bunch of other people were like, let's not have gender segregation in the sauna. They were going skinny dipping. They were getting in the sauna. Let's just get in whatever sauna we want. And so they were in the women's sauna. George and a bunch of, male writer friends. And Paris walks in to go into the sauna to all of these guys and says, oh, look, a bunch of pros. This is a very nice pun, but also means that her and George met nude.
Yes. And
later they were invited to a party in which the theme was to come dressed as you were when you met. And so they didn't go to that party. They did consider wearing a towel maybe, but they just didn't go.
Yeah.
I was reminded of Jamie and Brienne's tub scene.
Yes.
Personally.
Mm-hmm. I know. It made us think of that. Yeah. We wondered if that was an inspiration. So Paris also said something that was really, really relatable to almost anyone who's been to a convention, and especially the first time you've gone to a convention. If you went to Ice and Fire Con of Thrones, or some other convention for your first time, Paris said her first was DC DisCon in 1974. I have no idea. Besides being in Washington, D.C., I don't know. Discworld? I don't know what they just use that name. DisCon, maybe the disco, because it's the 70s. I don't know what the deal is with that name. I don't think that's a con that exists anymore. That doesn't matter. The point is, she called it the best weekend of her life and said the same kind of phrase that so many of us say.
It's really
like
is.
You know how they have different special names for Worldcons?
Yeah.
Like Con Zealand?
Okay.
DisCon is the DC.
Oh, so it was a Worldcon.
So technically, 2021 DC is a DisCon.
Oh, so it's coming back.
For the third DisCon. It was in 63, 74, and now 2021.
47 years later, it returns to DC in 2021. And so she said, it's like I found my people. Where have you been all my life? And that's really relatable, but putting it in perspective to the 70s, it must be even more intense because at least some of us could find each other online nowadays. And there's, like we said, there's more conventions, more opportunities for this. So you have it's not quite as a rare thing, but it's still the same basic feeling of, wow, this is what it's like to be around my fellow nerds. This is what it's like to be an introverted person, you know, to feel extroverted amongst other introverts.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, right. So
I'm so introverted.
Get up, introverts.
Get up. Oh gosh. So no, this was so relatable to me. I was because my first con was this year, so it was like she took the words out of my mouth. I was like, yes, this is exactly how I felt when I went to Ice and Fire Con, and it was Skelly night, and I'm looking around and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are my people. Oh my gosh. Like all you have to do is like go up to somebody and make a reference to like ghost grass or something, and then all of a sudden you're in and you're like best friends.
yeah.
Or somebody like Ashea is pretending to be your friend to win the Faceless Man game, and you're like, oh, are these people actually my friends? Or they're just pretending they're going to stab you in the back. Yes, they will stab you in the back.
But
Hey,
with a spoon.
You were not my target, and I did not stab you. I stabbed your friend.
Yes.
Because that was my target.
KW
And
Dent.
I don't get to choose who is killed. Okay, the many-faced god takes who they need.
Yes.
So George had some nice thoughts to add on to that. He said the same thing, sort of like, this is my place. I belong, you know, here. And he said that he credits conventions with their help really making their marriage stronger, like something that keeps them together. Because something like this, he said, the secret to love is books and fandom and memories that hold us together. You're making memories together, remembering these same moments. That's what fandom is all about. I hope that your first convention, you find that, or at your first convention, you find that.
Yes.
And that's so cool, yeah.
Yeah, the fandom and the memories, and that really is like us going to Ireland and all the crazy shenanigans. And we were able to actually, Ashane and I were able to express that to George personally at Castle Ward when we met him. We just thanked him for, you know, bringing us all together. We all wouldn't be here. And I know I've made so many friends this year, I can't even keep track of them all.
Should we play that video?
Yeah, let's play that video.
Okay.
This is a warning that it's going to be a bit of a different mood than we have right now, a bit louder because there's music in the background.
Watch that volume.
So be aware of the volume. If you have headphones in, I'm continuing to talk just so everyone knows. But it's about 2 minutes long, just FYI. Well, a minute and a half. Anyways, here's the video.
We're fans that we love your histories. I'm very glad that you took the time to do that. 100%.
It's so much fun. It's actually the longest song of Larendor, even though it's not really
Thank you.
That is my favorite story.
Somebody knows the earlier work here.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite story.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you. You brought all of us together.
Yeah. None of us would have met without your work.
Yeah. Been driving around Ireland, having anxiety attacks.
Thank you.
Very well to you.
Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was really fun. I was lucky enough to be standing there to video that. I'm not the best videographer, but it was just important to capture the moment, so we're glad we did that. That was a fun event. We'll have some more photos of that as we move through this chronologically, but that was just a great moment that fits this subtopic of fandom and uniting people.
And I did start by trolling George with that. So I was dressed up as an other to the party, so we had like the White Swatch cloaks and we were all joking about it, and then I was sitting there and we had like little finger foods at the beginning and mead, and we were eating and drinking, and I was thinking, I was like, oh, does that mean I have guests right now? And I was like, yeah, I'm a White Walker. Do I have guests right now? Like, is that a thing, you honorable Starks? And then we were joking about it, and I posted it on Twitter and everything. And then when George came around, I was like, okay, I really do need to ask him if now that I've like drank and eaten here at Winterfell, if I have guests right. And he was no, just straight no.
Yeah, he was basically telling you to get out. He's like, you have to leave now.
He's like, absolutely not. I was like, wow, I don't feel safe here. But there was another other there.
Another.
Oh yeah. Oh, there was, baby. There was another other.
Let's see this.
Yeah. I was at the party, and I was just looking around, and I was feeling really lonely. And then I was like, nobody here is like me, and I don't have guests right now. And I just feel like very vulnerable. And so I look, and all of a sudden, screen accurate, like costumed other walks in, my man. And Aziz took a video of us meeting.
Here we go. Oh yeah.
That is some smoldering. That's as much as ice eyes can smolder.
Yeah, baby.
If it was any hotter, you'd have melted there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just kept staring at that ice spear, and I was like, wow. I can't believe they let him in with that.
I know. It's really, they really should have thought that through. So also at Worldcon, this is still before the Castle Ward event. Back to Worldcon a bit. We're bouncing around a little bit. It's fine. We can do that. We're like Littlefinger. We have we can move through time and space with effortless ease. And they have a wonderful art exhibit every year at Worldcon. It's beautiful. We can't show pictures from it because they don't allow that. These are artists selling their work, and it kind of devalues it to have photos of it everywhere. So I highly recommend going to it. It's some of the best stuff you'll see in an art exhibit at a convention because it represents lots of different fandoms of different genres, and you get some of the tip-top stuff there. So definitely check that out if you can. Worldcon next year is in New Zealand, and then the year after that it's in Washington, D.C., like Ashea said, and it looks like it'll be Chicago the year after that. So, yeah, that's probable for the next few years.
Yes, but there is a rumor that the Chicago Worldcon could fall on the same weekend as DragonCon. So, choose. Big decisions.
Clash of cons there.
Yeah, specifically, Worldcon had the weekend first, and DragonCon was started as a Worldcon, and then they decided to take the weekend. So there's a little bit of bad blood there, and it has made it very difficult. That's why we only started going to Worldcon in the last 2 years, because we live in Atlanta, and it seems kind of silly for us to travel to a convention on the weekend of a convention here. Yeah,
especially for me, who's been going to DragonCon since the 90s, and it's really just a yearly tradition.
Yeah.
It would be hard to miss, but we might end up having to miss it into 2022. We'll see. But also, George, we even got to hear from George on that. George is one of the people that has cursed DragonCon, for doing that. He's not like, he doesn't hate them, but he is not going to go because it's like a miniature protest.
He's chosen his
He's clearly going to stick with his original. So a couple other quick notes from Worldcon besides the art exhibit. I went to a panel on crediting artists, and that was fun. There was just as an aside, there was an artist.
You went with Michael, right?
No, Michael was not there for that one.
You went to another panel with Michael.
Yeah, I did go to some panels with Michael, but I went to that one alone, I believe. Actually, maybe I did go with that with Michael. Maybe it's all a blur. Maybe Michael was there with me for that one. I think he was. Yeah, but there was a Magic the Gathering artist there who from the early days, Kaya Foglio, and that was a surprise for me, so that was cool because I had met her like 20 years ago, and it was cool to see her still doing lots of stuff. She and her husband are both artists, and that's neat hearing about them and their rise through the fandom in the early days of Wizards of the Coast and all that, and now the difference as it's transitioned to digital and all these other things. And it's an interesting topic. I think it wasn't a super well-attended panel. I think maybe some people were wondering, well, what is there to know? Credit artists, just do it, and that's it. But there is more to it. There's issues and business reasons. And so it was informative.
I think, on the subject of Michael, one of the panels I went to was with him too on architecture and sci-fi fantasy literature. It was really good. But the real highlight of the con for me, one of the big things was meeting Michael. And when we say
Yeah.
Michael, we mean
Yes.
Michael Klarfeld,
Yeah.
Paradox, who does the maps that are right behind them in that video. And, you know, I mean, he does our video intro. He's done so much for us. And so here are, first off, a picture of Michael with his Essos map and me in my Essos dress. Like after we had met. I think that was the next day.
Now, Michael lives in Germany, so that is part of why it's been difficult for us to find a time to meet, but this was a great opportunity, and we're glad it worked out.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and he's so funny and fun.
He is so much fun. I have to say, he was definitely up there on some of the top people that I met at the con. And it's funny for me, so I'm, I don't have anything to promote right now. Yeah, it's all part of my master plan. So it was nice going kind of just like as a bystander and seeing not only, first kind of meeting people and just figuring out who they are and their energy, and then realizing that they are so talented and have this amazing contribution to the fandom later. It's interesting seeing it in both ways. Like I listened to your podcast before I met you, and now we're friends, I hope.
Yes.
Still, yeah. Maybe not after this. You're like, bye, Christina. Never see you again. But yeah, it was great meeting him, and he's so funny. He is so funny.
Yes. We got a picture of our whole group of our procession of people who got maps signed.
Yeah, let's show that.
This is just a picture. You can see Avril, who we've talked about, Michael, Aziz, Christina, myself in my map dress, and Matt, who you'll see in this video too, and Warren, who's in our chat right now.
Yeah.
Hi. And we were super stealthy with this one. We wanted Michael to get the attention that he deserved from George. So we all decided, okay, well, we're going to go in procession and each get a different map signed. So George will just be looking at all of the maps and just these gorgeous maps. And so he sees all of them and he's like, oh, I'm signing a bunch of maps and they're really great. And then Michael's the last one. So we put him last so he could go and, be the artist and meet him. And he did a great job.
Yeah. So let's see a video of our little map procession
Here we go.
This is I think about 2 minutes long. So here we are.
Did you hear what he said?
The whole world will be on fire.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm taking a video of our procession of maps, if you don't mind, please. Okay. Thank you so much. Our last person is coming up.
Which one did you have? Oh, the Westeros. Yep. That's awesome map.
There's probably a dozen signed versions now.
All right, so there you go. You saw that procession. We had so much fun with that, coming up with the idea and then watching it unfold. Not the maps unfold. Well, that too. I meant the
Oh,
process.
Aziz, yes.
Hey, we're talking about Michael. He was about the only person besides maybe Eliana of Girls Gone Canon who matches my pace for bad dad jokes. Michael was right there with me. It was bad having us both together. It was like,
Oh yeah.
I would say that Brian E., who's in this very room, is our live audience. Is
Yes,
that's a good
I
point.
was going to.
That's a good point.
Yeah, he's definitely up there, no, top tier. Yeah,
It's
Michael.
competitive.
Yeah, I know it is, and I'm the judge, so because I've had to deal with it all.
Yeah, you were in the center. Puns, bright and dark.
Yes,
Young and
God.
old, and you in the middle.
Snarling in the midst of it all. Yes. Well, actually, Michael came up with one of the better puns. As I was dressed as Shira Sea Star, and I have terrible allergies.
Well, we can just show
Yes.
the pun in live action here,
Yes.
right?
Shira Sneeze Star.
Isn't that so funny?
Oh my God. Shira Sneeze
We
Star.
just happened, you know. So, if you couldn't hear what was being said during during that procession, they asked for Michael's information at the end there. That's very
George
nice.
personally asked for
Yeah.
the information. and
Get
for-
his info.
Yeah, and Michael not prepared at all for this moment. He has his card. Oh, yes, I have my card. Oh, great. He wants the maps. Oh, Michael has a roll of every single one of his maps just in case George asked him for them, which he did. So George has all of Michael's maps, and I hope that they're in his office or
He
something.
was so ready for this eventuality. What he said to me there was, as I was walking away, I said, the whole world, the whole world, because it was Michael's Essos plus Westeros plus the whole world map, which is a new one from him. And he said, as I'm walking away, George looked back at me and says, "Soon it'll all be burning." And we were like, "What?" And I said, "Spoiler."
What is that?
Yeah, I was like, "Did you hear what he said to me?" And I was like, "I think he was just messing around, but that would be kind of weird if the whole world burned." It's like, that'd be a way to end it. And we just mentioned Warren, who was a great friend throughout the weekend, a local. So he was helping us with the Irish expressions and some of the local sites and all that. And he was generous enough to donate his signing spot to getting a shirt signed for our very own Sanrixian, who we got to see this week at DragonCon, staying over with us. And
She also just gave us a super chat for the puns.
Well, thank you for that,
Yay.
Sanri. And Warren did a great job getting that shirt signed for you. We were happy to bring it to you.
And speaking of puns, Warren, also, we must thank you for the pints that were promised, because he promised us pints of Guinness, and we went to a local pub and got pints of Guinness, and we called them the pints that were promised.
That's right. Having a Guinness
Thank
in
you
a pub.
for really explaining that to me, Christina.
Yes, because they were promised. He paid his debts.
So also at the con, at Worldcon, they always have the Hugo Awards, which is the biggest awards ceremony / awards organization, I guess you call it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's bigger than the DragonCon's awards.
Okay,
but
it's definitely longer.
I think it's more
Yeah.
prestigious.
Yeah, I would say so. It seems like it is. And it's a very beautiful ceremony. They have a wonderful, though not serious sounding. They really are serious and very talented. The
Yeah.
Irish Video Game Orchestra.
Yeah, they
Sounds
were
like a
beautiful.
joke. But they had us.
They were at TitanCon too.
Yes, they were. They had a lot of the room in tears during the in memoriam part of Hugo Awards, which remembers any creators or important fandom members who have died in the previous year. It's something they always do. It's kind of like at the Emmys, where they do this, the same kind of thing, where all the movie stars and directors who have died in the last year, they do a little moment of that to remember. And that was really good. And Hugo's itself is a great experience, just seeing all the great speeches and all the people who were put so much into their work, and there's so much anticipation. And
They got the John W. Campbell Award. The name changed.
that's right. That was a big moment. The
Yes.
long-running award, the John W. Campbell Award, which has been around for quite a while. The winner kind of very emphatically suggested that the name shouldn't be named after him because of his extreme views that even
Yeah, she came up to win her award and went, John W. Campbell. This is Jeanette, and she came up and said John W. Campbell was a fascist.
Yep.
I was reenacting it because she was
Yes.
like, She's a fast. I couldn't believe. I was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna go see this award ceremony. Everyone's gonna be serious.
Award.
The first person goes up and she's like, he is a fascist, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is such a great moment.
Yeah.
This is
you look up and
most exciting ceremony I've ever been to. I was like, wow, and
like,
then
whoa, think what's happening here.
I was like, oh wow. Yeah, I was expecting like, I don't know, maybe something a little bit better than going to like a high school graduation or something, and it was top tier.
It was really good. Yeah, that was one of the key moments of the whole event, and it, like she said, it worked. They changed the award name within like 48 hours or
That's
72
great.
hours. It changed.
I didn't know
quickly.
that. I'm really happy for her. She was.
And then I didn't know much about it. I looked up John Campbell, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can see why. I can see why she's saying this. Even people like Asimov and Heinlein. Like Heinlein was a pretty far right winger, and he didn't want anything to do with this guy eventually. Like, and Asimov was like, this guy is just gone. He said awful things like, oh, the black people were happier when they had slavery. Like what? So you just just no. Good to move on from that. Yeah.
Next.
Another really fine moment was one of the speakers gave a wonderful speech on the Irish soul and how much it's given to creativity and how much it's inspired so much. And I wish we had a recording of that. If it's on YouTube somewhere, I highly recommend it. But yeah, just a wonderful night. That was great. Then we went to the Hugo Losers Party, which is something that George throws every year, and that was fun.
Yeah, it was at the Guinness Storehouse.
Yeah.
No big deal.
No big deal. Dances with Wolves and Linda's and Javi's in my case. We did a little dancing. I'm referring to Linda Antonsen and Javi Marcos of podcast De Hielo y Fuego.
Oh, God.
My Spanish is rusty or non-existent, really. But I think that was close enough. I think you got the point.
This isn't, but on the subject of Elio, this isn't at the Hugo Losers Party, but we did get a picture of the three of us right here.
Yay.
I took it. I took this, so I'm behind the lens.
That's why it's a good photo.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, because I didn't take it.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, it's a real stereotype. The girls took better photos than the guy. It just everything played out the way. Yeah.
Yeah, Shay and I were a dream team.
There are plenty of good male photographers out there, but I'm not one of them. I'm adequate at best. So let's do a quick couple of questions that have popped up here. Well, just literally just two. And they're not even really questions. They're just super chat interjections here. Stephen Stark, in honor of Acre Frey, the originator of this tradition, it is time for you, Christina, to say Irish wristwatch 3 times fast.
Thanks, guys. Oh, gosh.
It ain't easy.
Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch.
Irish wristwatch.
Irish swishwash.
Irish swish. Yeah. So that's what happens. It's hard to say, as always. It doesn't get easier.
Now you try at home.
Thanks to you try it home. And thanks to Sanrixian Super Chat for the puns. Yeah, see, some people
more puns.
Some people will give money for the puns. Some of you hate them.
I don't know. I feel like it's tolerate them. Yeah.
Yeah. No one hates them. Just tolerate. No, some people hate them. No one loves them. They tolerate them.
I think it honestly is the glue that binds us together as a fandom, or the puns. The puns and the pranks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I choose to believe that.
Yes.
I choose to believe that. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll roll with that. We'll pretend it's true even if it's not. So any final thoughts from Worldcon before we move on to the next step in this journey, which is Galway / Castle Ward?
Well, let's see. I had a great time. Met a lot of people that I would see again in the coming week, and yeah.
It was too bad that we could only see Michael at Worldcon. Michael Clarfeld could not go to both conventions. There were a few other people that could only go to one or the other. But we were grateful for that time.
At this point of our journey, we had to depart from Michael, and it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. I really want to do a GoFundMe or something to get Michael to some of these cons.
I know.
But it's not a matter of money alone. It's a matter of time because he's a teacher.
School teacher. Well, so we'll look for summertime.
But yes, anyways, he needs to come to the U.S. and come to all these cons.
Yeah, he hasn't been to the U.S., so that would be really cool just for that. All right, so let's talk about Galway Castle Ward. We went to Galway for just one day, and it's not a big part of the trip in terms of Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire stuff. there was one of the most beautiful places in all of Ireland is the Cliffs of Moher, and we had fun naming each other in the group after Moher. What were some of these names we came up with?
Oh yes, no. Speaking of puns, yeah, we were the company of the wind blown because we were walking on these cliffs, and
it's so windy. It's
so
so
windy.
terrifying.
you really, I think, I love hiking, and first it was great to go with a group of like 7 of us on the cliffs, a big group of like, yeah, it was 7, right?
Yeah.
7 of us were on the
Or was
cliffs.
it 8? 7.
I don't know. It was a lot. There was a lot of
It was
us.
7. That's the most.
We left
fitting.
one.
Yeah.
We might have left one. It's no, and it was super windy, but you really see who people are. So Aziz is the kind of like, he's like a billy goat, and he'll like jump from rock to rock,
He is
cliff
like
face.
a billy goat.
Yeah, he will look down from the cliffs. Ashea is like taking, well, yeah, you guys were taking pictures of cows. I'm like,
I just want to take I took a beautiful. I should have included the portrait of the cow that I took. It was a beautiful portrait. You had to.
Photo.
Even Christina admitted that it was a great photo.
yeah. Well, we were walking. Aziz and I were walking, and we were kind of going off like here and there, and they were just kind of walking in a straight line ahead. And so we see them, and I look at them. They're like just looking at cows, and the cliffs are to their backs, you know. And I'm like, you guys are supposed to be looking at the cliffs, not the cows. And
Hey, I've been walking seeing cliffs for a while at that point, but the cows were new to me.
oh gosh, this is like, I can see a meme in my head. It's like Tywin with mutton chops, and it's the cows, and on the other side is Charles Dance, aka the Cliffs of Moher. And Ashaya's like, no, the cows.
The joke there is that Christina quite likes Tywin Lannister as Charles Dance, but as I kept reminding her throughout the trip, Tywin Lannister does not look like Charles Dance. Tywin Lannister is bald with mutton chops.
He is Charles Dance, and he's overtaken the canon.
I do like Charles Dance, I will admit. But no, the cliffs were lovely, and yeah, one of our friends had like an umbrella. It was like very lovely, and so he was Moher Poppins.
Yeah, so our friend, Sophian, right? Sophian. I know. I was nervous, so I was like, I don't want to forget anybody's true name, given name. We have other names now, but it was windy, and I'm from the North, Michigan, and so I'm used to all sorts of weather, and like there's these Southerners over here. So I'm out there. I've got my at Chuck Laz windbreaker, and it just starts raining and winding on us. And the thing about Ireland is that the weather changes in like 10 minutes. So we just stand through the rain. And Sophian is holding this like clear, like purple polka dot frilly umbrella, like uselessly trying to stop this storm. And I'm looking at him like, he's Moher Poppins. And I was like ready, and I was like so excited to give Aziz this pun. I was like, Aziz, he's Moher Poppins. And we're like, oh. And then we all got Moher names on the cliffs. So I am the Moher of Dragons.
Yes, and I am Moher Koro. Moher Koro. Moher Koro.
I'm Moher Sandra. Avril was Avril San Mormont.
Matt was originally something else, but I renamed him because he is great at DDR, so I named him Dance Moher Lucian.
And did Mango or Simon get nicknames?
They did.
Simon was Moher Tea because more tea. Simon made he made us excellent tea and sandwiches.
I was I'm a coffee drinker, and this one morning he's like, "Do you want tea?" I'm like, "Yeah." Yes. And I drank a lot more tea the rest of the time there. Of course, I'm already back to coffee, but the tea was nice.
Well, it was great British tea with the milk, and then so he was the perfect, just true gentleman, British gentleman. And then I love how Aziz and I were just so grateful. We're like, thank you so much. You didn't have to do this for us, blah, blah, blah. And then Avril comes downstairs. She starts sipping on the tea. And then she looks at Simon at one point. She's like, more tea, more tea.
And he's like, I stopped making tea for 5 minutes.
Yes. He looked to us like the office camera. He's like, I've stopped making tea for 5 minutes.
Oh yes, the other one for Mongu was Cereal Morel.
Yes, that was it because he
Nice.
saved Avril, right?
Yeah.
He saved Avril from falling off the cliffs. And he's like, what do we say to the god of Moher? Not today.
Yeah. At least just down into the mud, which I did fall. I was very cocky. On one way across a fence, I like foisted myself on top and jumped down, and it was great, and I felt cool and all that. On the way back, I tried to do the same thing, but I was just too confident, and I fell. My knees were all muddied up. I'm still bruised on one knee from falling.
Oh, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really am.
Oh my gosh, your jeans, I thought they were ruined, honestly, after that.
They're fine.
Yeah, no. But honestly, though, the people who should have fell off did not. So, like namely you.
Oh yeah, we have
it's-
pictures of Aziz just laying like flat on the cliff face, looking over the edge. I have pictures of all my pictures of him are from far away, and you have to like put an arrow, and you're like, "There's Aziz."
That little speck in the distance.
I would like to hold my phone over the edge to film, down and see
Yeah.
how far it was. That was pretty fun.
It's like,
Yeah.
see the caution sign that says don't go further? Aziz is past that.
Yeah. So, was it on the way to Galway that we saw the Kinvara sign?
Yes.
So that was cool. So we were just passing this location, and there's a sign that says Kinvara. And, well, that was a surprise. We didn't know where that word had come from, but apparently it's Irish and Relorist.
Yes.
Well, yeah, how about that? Which
Yeah.
many things are, apparently. I mean, Shadow Baby Cave, right there nearby in Ireland. Yeah. So, Relor, Ireland, more in common than you thought.
Rohala.
So we went to Castle Ward. That would have been on, was that Tuesday? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Whatever.
the days I wasn't counting.
It was a Wednesday. So
Oh,
we wanted to try to fit several things into this day. We tried to go to the Tollymore Forest, which is where they had the birth of the direwolves scene, or the finding of the direwolf pups.
Yeah, great
And-
great parking lot because we did not make it on the trail. We
Yeah.
decided we did not have enough time.
Fantastic parking lot. Yeah, really, really top-notch parking lot that we didn't go out. We pulled into for a few minutes and then left. So you would think that was the only reason we came. We went there and saw the parking lot and left. It got a bit rainy and windy, and we realized we probably didn't have enough time to go to do both. So we had to bail on that. We went to Castle Ward, where we were greeted with mead and finger foods.
Before Castle Ward, we did get to some locations.
Yeah, we went to two. Don't you remember?
What was the orders all met? Oh yeah, we did Inch Abbey. Okay.
Yes.
We did Inch Abbey and that river. So Inch Abbey is where the King in the North scene was filmed. It's a abbey built, I think, in the 11th century, if I recall, or 10th century. I can't recall, but very old. Not the oldest place we saw, but pretty damn old, 1,000 years ish. And
So
we have some footage.
Yeah, let's see this video.
The King in the North!
You're my king, now and always. The King in the North!
The King in the North!
All right, so you see us trying to, reenact the King in the North scene there.
Yes.
Doing our best, King in the North, shouting, getting some shouting practice in.
You were great. You were top notch on my video. That was Aziz in the background. I posted that video. Everyone was like, who's in the background? Is that a real northerner?
Well, Christina was smart, and as we pulled up into the parking lot, she's like, wait, let's watch this moment. She pulls up the episode, and we get a nice, fresh watch of the scene there. Looks like we have a chatter here, SuperPod87, who says he met us at Castle Ward. Well, I think I remember you, sir. Yeah, that was cool. So, like I said, I was hoping
I definitely remember him. He came up and said hi, and he was like, I was like, oh, what's your name? Pod. I was like, oh, how fitting. I guess there are lots of Irish people named Pod. We personally know a couple.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
was
pretty
really
cool.
Yeah. So the event itself. Wait, no, I'm skipping the forest still, or the river. We got to do the river.
Yes, of
so
course.
After Inch Abbey, very close by, conveniently, we drove to what's the name of the river? The Coyle River, which reminds me of the Coin River, which is one of the tributaries to the Royne. But probably not related.
Yeah. And this makes sense for all the filming. It's, you notice when you were traveling that they were all yeah, no, here I go. That they were all the filming locations were kind of in these like groups, which was convenient for us, but also you imagine it's convenient for filming where they go out, you know, away from the studio, and there's just like a bunch of, they're very close by, like they were 10 minutes away from each other. And every time I went to a different location, I just thought about, you know, the location scouts and what they must do and their jobs, like, you know, going on this pier and being like, okay, this is River Run, you know?
Yeah,
But-
this is River Run, and we'll just CGI over that
Yes.
non-ancient at all looking building.
Speaking of CGI over that non-existent castle sort of modern building, we did our own version of CGI and our own version of, well,
The
you'll
River
see.
Run boat scene. Here we go.
Lady Triple with that red fork flow. Rhymes so hot like a flaming arrow. Walter in the phrase. You really want to go? F with this. Make you the emir to my bow.
And yes, I can't help but crack up every time I see that castle emoji pop up.
Now you know that red fork flow is a thing. So if you have
Yes.
the red fork flow, it means
Stay
you
clear of me.
are...
That's
Oh my
what it
gosh.
means.
Or it means you're an accomplished Westerosi rapper.
Yes. I mean,
either.
I'm searching for rappers for my Westerosi rap squad. At me, at Lady X Triple on Twitter. Yeah, I'm looking for my rap squad. Well, it's funny. So I had like the Edmure to my bow line already ready. And this is actually a funny story. Stories from Ireland. All right. So we go to the river and I'm sitting there, I'm like, and this is like how to build a rap workshop. All right. So Aziz and Ashaya, I don't believe you had written any Westerosi raps on the fly before.
No.
First time for everything.
Yeah. So I was
Aziz
freaking
had
out.
been working previously on a version of Jolene. So that's not a rap, but does have rhyming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
We've done some
so-
of Song of Ice and Fire music, but this was a different.
different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so yeah, we can talk about how we built this because it was a labor from all of us.
Yes.
So
Everyone contributed.
Yeah. So, well, what happened is I was scared because we were going to the location and I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I want to do this. I got to spit something while I'm here. So, you know, let's make this up right now. And I had been driving, so I couldn't like really think of much or like Google things. So, I was with, you know, Aziz and Ashaya. And so we're in the car and I'm freaking out. I don't have service because I was like trying to do an SOS to Brian, who wrote the Westeros musical. And I was like, I'm having a lyric emergency. Like I need lyrics, but I didn't have him there. So I was like, Aziz and Ashaya, we got to do this together. So I think you came up with the flow, or well, we thought bow and flow.
Yeah, I think I did come up with flow. I do think.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
We were thinking about like boat terms that rhyme with bow. So we first we said
Bows,
green fork
yeah.
flow. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell this version of the story.
You
but
are. Well, there was a good reason for green because you had first you first had the word scene in there.
Yes,
so
that
it was
was
like
it.
Lady Triple on the scene at first, and so we rhymed green, but then we realized
Yeah.
green fork.
Well,
wrong one.
so yeah. Well, so what happened is, so we initially had like the green fork flow, and then Ashaya came up with the flaming arrow part. So we're like, rhyme so hot like a flaming arrow. And then I was thinking, okay, I've got to like direct this because the best raps are like where you're coming at somebody. So you got to be like Walter in the phrase, you know. Okay, we'll get them. They're like rivals, and then well, so then we're walking and we're filming and we're getting ready to film it, and we're like, we should probably double check the green fork thing. But we don't have any service, so we're freaking out. And then Ashaya and I look at each other. I'm like, we're wearing maps. Like
both of us.
Yes.
I'm in my Black Milk Westeros hoodie, and Christina's in a Westeros scarf. So we had multiple choices.
Yeah, so we go and like pull out our clothes and we're looking. We're like, no, it's definitely the red fork. Thank God we caught that. So that was a good moment.
Yep, and now it's immortalized in internet history forever. It
Yes.
cannot be taken back.
Yes. And then we went to Castle Ward directly.
And then we went to
afterwards.
Castle Ward. Yes. Okay, so so we were greeted with mead and finger food there, and some hanging around time, meeting people, and just chatting.
That's where the video we showed of Christina and her, other.
Yeah, I dressed up as an
Other
other.
lover.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
hmm
And then we, after a little while of hanging out there and chilling and having a drink or two, we went inside, and there was an interview with George and a Q&A. Now, this was nice because it's always nice to have, George on stage talking, but this was a very small event. There was less than 150 people, I would guess 120-ish maybe.
Yeah, maybe that.
So it was a little more intimate. George is a little more comfortable in a group that sized, and you could kind of tell he was a little more laid back. A lot of in the past Q&As, people come up to the mic and ask a question, but they seem to have done away with that, and that's probably smart because the problem
I don't think it's that they did away. I don't know. I think it was just that.
No,
event.
that's what Sid told me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Sid told. Yeah, one of George's assistants said they're not likely to do many of those anymore because over the years, there's just so many questions George has already been asked, and people don't necessarily research, and so they ask the same question. And so to avoid bad questions or repetitive questions, they screen them.
I must say, I do think that we have seen events where they just had someone at the front whose job was to ask, what's your question going to be? Okay, you can't have that question.
Yeah.
And so what they did at Castle Ward was similar, but I do think they could have a screening process that allows someone to and be still interact and say something.
Yeah. Well, I think in this case, like with what you're describing, you have that's like an employee of that event, and they are only going to be able to screen certain questions. Like they're not going to necessarily know they're going to know, like, no, don't ask George about the Winds of Winter.
Yeah,
don't ask George about season 8.
I'm picturing one of his assistants being the person.
Okay, yeah. If it's one of them, then that would work. But yeah, sometimes it's just a random.
But what they did at Castle Ward is they had us all write it out onto a postcard where we wrote like our name and where we were from. And so we had 3 chances to get a question answered, and Christina let us have her question.
So what were the 2 questions that were not answered? We got one of our 3 questions was answered.
One was are Naga's bones petrified werewood?
They did not answer that one.
Mine was what non-Targaryen character from A Song of Ice, from Fire and Blood, would you most like to explore in a novel?
Okay.
A novel. And then Aziz's that was picked was, what's the oldest castle in Westeros?
Yeah, not only was it picked, but it was picked first. All right. First question he answered. So that was fun. He answered that question, and he didn't have like a ready answer.
My original guess was Casterly Rock. And then if I had answered next, I would have guessed like something about the High Tower, just because of how old Battle Isle and all that, like just the oldness of the Old Town region.
Yeah, and Shay wasn't far off because the first thing he had to think about it. He said, that's an interesting question, and he paused, he thought about it, and he said it could be Winterfell, and then he started talking about how it could be Casterly Rock, depending on what you consider a castle, because at first the Casterly is just... It was just a cave.
They just tunneled in and made it bigger.
Yeah.
It was a lion cave.
Killed the lion.
Yeah, they ran out the lion, and then they just started building into the rock. And eventually it became Casterly Rock.
Exactly. So that's like, at what point do you consider that a castle? So that's kind of where it's like, it's a gray area. But George then kind of segued into talking more about Casterly Rock and how it's a rock, and talked about the Rock of Gibraltar, which it's inspired by.
He loves talking about it.
He loves it.
I've asked him questions about Casterly Rock before, and he could just wax poetically on about it forever.
Yeah. And he did talk crap about the show. I was surprised that he talked crap about the show openly. He said he was like, they got it all wrong. They got Casterly Rock all wrong.
Yeah,
and I was
passionate
thinking
about that rock.
Yeah, he really is.
Don't mess that rock up.
Yeah, I was like, yes.
So there were, in addition to the Q&A questions, there were a few good ones from the audience, but probably the better questions came from the interviewer. He had some really good ones, and we will talk about some of those briefly here. Of course, I actually forgot to mention at the beginning here, this site is Winterfell, not the expanded Winterfell for season 8, but the Winterfell of all the previous seasons before having a battle scene. So all the, like, a lot of, not necessarily all the interior scenes, but all the outdoor, all the, like, the shots of Winterfell. And Shay's got one picture here of it, at least.
Yeah, so I do. Here it is he's got this lovely shot of Winterfell at night.
Yeah, see, I can take a few good photos.
Yeah, with your nice.
take
Just
enough
as
of
long
them.
as you're not in it.
Yeah, I think of scenery, you get a much better shot.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with the scenery. I'm not as good at taking pictures of people.
Yeah.
Also, it's a matter if you take 50 photos, a couple of them are going to look pretty good, right? It's one of the
Yeah.
stopped clock principle.
That's my strategy when I'm outside in the sun trying to take pictures and you just can't see your screen at all. It's like, hopefully.
So some other questions that he was asked were things like, he was asked about how much of a fan of history he is, and he mentioned that something he said before, that if you take from one source, it's plagiarism. If you take from many sources, it's research. And he says, I've researched quite a lot. And this is from history. But he also points out that history is full of stories that are crazier than anything you could ever come up with. That if you put them in a real book or in a fantasy or fiction story, people wouldn't believe this. Oh, that's over the top. And the real world is full of stuff that's just as crazy as anything someone could come up with. He mentioned how much he loves the Plantagenets, a historical family of England and France that were... this is Henry VI was a Plantagenet. Henry VI was a Plantagenet. All his ancestors were, and he's a Tudor. But the Tudors come off of are an offshoot of the Plantagenets. They're like they're all related. Those royal families, they're all interconnected, just like they are in A Song of Ice and Fire. They are in the real world too. But he also talked a bit about history writers, and then not just historians. There's a difference between the two. He drew a distinction there that historians, they're a little drier and, they're more scholarly and they're more accurate.
Yeah.
But George himself kind of prefers
He likes popular history.
Yeah, he
and
actually
that's
prefers
always
that.
been clear in his writing, not only that he likes them, but that he likes the idea of them. And, as you see in his writing, that those are the histories that he wants to write and show are the popular histories, and that he likes to play. And sometimes I wonder how much he's playing with it on purpose versus how much he himself has fallen prey to the historical inaccuracies.
Yeah.
The idea that, some things history makes it seem like it's the case, but actually it was not.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. It's just that it was repeated in different history books, popular histories.
And in some ways he's aware of that, but he just goes along with it.
He goes along with
that
the
would
one
make
that's
it real.
the fun one,
Yeah.
the one that's a little more outrageous.
Yeah. He definitely has fun. He sips tea.
He does like to sip
Yeah.
his tea. And he says, and that's how he writes Archmaester Gildane, who wrote Fire and Blood. He called Archmaester Gildane an opinionated old coot. And, a lot of people have criticized the way he writes Archmaester Gildane, but a lot of it's entirely intentional because this is a reflection of how many real world people writing about history, not necessarily historians, which Archmaester Gildane is not a historian, right? He's a maester. They don't have historians in Westeros. He's the closest thing, perhaps, but he doesn't use the type of historical...
They do have maesters whose copper links are specifically in history, and who, they do have ones that are essentially the historian maester.
But they're not necessarily the type of historian that we consider a historian in the real world. Like, they don't have necessarily the same scholarly ethics or the same, so his is a little more... proto, right? They're not as developed. They're not as strict with how they record things. There's not as much literacy in Westeros as some other places might have. So it's clear that a lot of this is intentional. He's intentionally making Gildane over the top, intentionally having Gildane put a lot of his own opinions in there, which is something a regular historian would probably not do. So it's neat to see how intentional this is.
I think it's just this meta commentary and trolling, expert
there's
level trolling.
There's definitely some trolling.
Yeah.
He's trolling. There was a hint, by the way, from this is a slight digression. One of George's assistants kind of mentioned the 5 forts and kind of threw out that was she thought that was probably George trolling because that's like he just wanted y'all to think this was like the wall or something like that. He did that just to mess with y'all. It wasn't her exact words, but it was something along that. And as we start to look at the names of things around the 5 forts, we can kind of see where there might be a little bit of humor here, maybe a little sexual humor. First of all,
Oh, Christina can.
Yeah,
go
this
on
is
about
this is the one that this is mine.
Yeah, let's kick it over
Well, so this is now it's almost like that Looney Theories panel, but mine is that whores go to. Well, I wish I had the map, but
it's off screen.
yeah. So
It's
you see
off
the 5
screen.
forts, right? And actually, I saw this. I was doing a countdown for Con of Thrones, and I was looking. It was like 5 days. And I'm like, oh, 5 forts. Like, let me go tweet out this thing about the 5 forts. And I'm looking at the map, and I'm like, wait, it's next to Bone Town? And I'm like, what is Bone Town, though? And then next to Bone Town, there's this thing called the Dry Deep, and it's like this like cavernous thing. So we're like, ooh, you got to go through the Dry Deep to get to Bone Town? Like, what's going on? And then there's the Bleeding Sea and the Gray Waste.
The Gray Waste. It's like, what's he talking about here?
Yeah, there's a lot going on over there. And I actually went to a search of Ice and Fire, and I put in Bone Town because I was like, what's going on in Bone Town? Nothing. There's nothing on Bone Town.
They don't want you to know what's happening in Bone Town. What happens in Bone Town stays in Bone Town, and they've been effective at keeping it that way. That's why there's nothing out there.
I was too much of a wimp to like ask George about Bone Town, but I really wanted to.
It's like we'd like Bone Town. We talk about what's Bone Town.
Like,
I won't even remember. And he's like, I don't recall.
Yeah, we're sitting at lunch with him, and I just start screaming like, "What is Bone Town?"
First rule of Bone Town: do not talk about Bone Town.
Yes.
So that was fun. There were some other good questions in there, and we'll maybe report on some of the other stuff later. We're going to keep for time purposes here. I'll skip ahead to a little bit that is, a little of interest to everybody, which is his writing process. He's talked about it plenty of times. One new tidbit, at least I thought it was new. Maybe he said this before. We know that he uses DOS and WordStar machine. It's not connected to the internet, which that's been out there for a long time. And of course, one of the stated reason is that you can't get hacked or get any viruses that way, which that's great. We don't want, it's good that there's no chance of that happening. We're all thankful that no one could hack George.
Yeah, thankful.
Yeah, thankful.
Yeah.
No, I am. That would actually be really messed up.
Yeah.
But
So, but apparently he just really doesn't like Word. All the autocorrection suggestions, he doesn't want any program telling him how to spell Targaryen or...
I don't think he realizes that you can make your own personal dictionary.
Yeah, he just...
that he could have an assistant do such a thing for him.
He doesn't want to go through all that.
No, that's the whole thing.
Yeah. So he
don't mess with the process of Shayas.
Notably, you can do such a thing, because I do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Google Docs, you can just add it to your dictionary.
I mean, that's a fun thing that a lot of us have done on like Twitter or Instagram, show like the autocorrects that your phone makes. Like my phone knows Relore, it's like just, well, not this one. My older phone, I just had to type R and it would be like, Relore?
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I just typed R, man. That's it?
I type B and it goes Bone Town. It's like, whoa.
So that was neat to learn a little extra there. And the interviewer also asked him about endings, which of course endings is something a big topic right now because George has to end it and season 8's ending. So he didn't really want to talk about season 8. That wasn't really a thing.
Well, he asked him about his legacy.
Yeah, his legacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, what? He goes, what do you think your legacy? And he looks around at the banners because the room is filled with all these Game of Thrones banners. He's like, well, I think A Song of Ice and Fire will be my legacy. Like, of course.
Like, oh, it was a bit of a weird question.
Groundbreaking.
A1, obviously we know what his legacy will be. And B, it's a very dark question to ask about your legacy.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. It's basically it's asking about what
what remains when you're gone.
Yeah, you have to,
as Tywin says.
It's not necessarily the place you want to be thinking about. Like I don't mind thinking about my legacy, as a 40-something-year-old, but yeah, I don't know if I'll want to be thinking about it when I'm 70-something or 80-something. Yeah, so it was still a pointed question. He talks about. The question was is it journey before destination? Like what matters more? Does a bad ending ruin the whole thing? And of course that's like people were leaning forward like, well,
yeah, right.
And he said, well, if you don't like how it ends, the experience isn't wasted, but it doesn't invalidate the quality of the rest, but it can, there's nothing, it's your own experience. And
your opinion can change later.
Yeah, your opinion can, that's a great point. He says he reads Lord of the Rings every few years. He keeps reading it over and over. And at the first time, the Scouring of the Shire puzzled him and confused him.
As a child, as like a 13-year-old. Yeah, he was young when he read it.
And he's like, wait, we won. The good guys won. Why is this happening? But later he realized why it was so good. And later he came to appreciate characters like Boromir, who people accuse Tolkien of being too black and white. But that's clearly not the case all the way through. Boromir is a perfect example. Maybe the best example. Someone who was corrupted by the ring, but for heroic reasons. He wanted to use it to save people. He didn't want to enrich himself or make himself a badass. He wanted to save his people. And so George was really struck by that, and that was the example he gave.
Yeah, and I have to say, when he was saying this stuff, and I'm glad that we're doing this on this, because it really, as a fan, it made me really invigorated for the ending of his books, because he was like, I am going to end this. Like, this is like, I want this to be a masterpiece. That's what that was his vibe.
Words.
Yeah, he
that
said,
was
I
his
want
actual words.
Yeah, he's like, I want this to be a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Like, he was ready. You know, I don't know. I felt like he was like, I've got this, and I felt George was confident that he knew it, like, within himself, that he was going to end this, and he's going to end it. And it's going to be like his legacy and his masterpiece.
Yeah, I didn't feel like he was worried about living up to all the expectation. Yeah. He was like, yeah, of course, I got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, hold my beer.
Yes.
He wants it to be good, and he says he does, like Ashaya said, he doesn't feel a ton of pressure, but he does recognize that a lot of people are paying attention, and that he, and so that says a lot. He's not just, it's not that a lot of people accuse him of being lazy, which is ridiculous, or of taking too much time doing other things, but it's a lot of it is just careful consideration. He knows now that unlike when he started, there's just so many more people paying attention, and that just maybe it's not the kind of pressure that he can't handle, but it just means that it's going to be seen by more people. More people are going to read it. It's just more important in that regard, and so he wants to be careful with it. He wants it to be great. Yeah. Yeah,
and he was talking about the pacing too, and he said he did say A Storm of Swords was his best paced, like written.
He's the one he was most felt the best about.
Yeah.
And a lot of people love Feast and Dance, but those weren't the original plans. So
And it makes sense. He was talking about his writing style and how he just needs, like, when he comes home, he needs to just be in his element, and his best writing comes when he's just at home for months. And you think about how everything blew up and, like, in his life, and how he doesn't get to be at home and, have those, like, months of just writing and writing and writing like he used to. But yeah, we all hope that he for wins, and he was confident in wins and the last book, which do we know it's going to be called A Dream of Spring?
Yeah, it's going to be A Dream of Spring.
Yeah. He was very confident. I got the vibe that he was confident that these are going to be excellent books.
Me too. I got that same vibe, and that's really good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So we also had some other little things at Castle Ward that were of note.
Mm-hmm.
We ran into some friends, as we mentioned. We met listener Pod, but we also met Sandra and Mateo. We have a lot to say about Mateo. Here's a selfie of all of us in our cloaks.
Yeah,
and Christina has her jewels on, her other jewels.
It is fun to wear a cloak.
I love it. I think we need to buy ourselves some cloaks.
Yeah, I agree. That was fun. It was just like, this really covers. Yeah, this you can just wrap it around you. It was just, it was nice.
Great.
It was good.
So we got that, and then we have a nice video here of when George left Castle Ward.
Yes,
that will play.
Here comes the George. Here goes. No one cut him by accident. Okay, so that was really fun. That was really cool. We loved Castle Ward, and it was a unique experience. We only knew we were going kind of the last minute. It was a last minute event, basically.
I'm so glad we went. That was probably one of the highlights. It was so intimate, and afterwards, George came around and personally said hello to every single person
and took pictures with them, which he usually does not do. He doesn't. No. He's very generous with signings, but he doesn't really like to take a lot of pictures with people. That's just kind of a hassle, and people kind of I don't know, people touch him and things like that. It's just not, when you're a celebrity, you got to understand. I can respect that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's his bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, not only I feel like celebrities people have the right to want whatever they want, but he's of a certain age.
Yeah.
Where like younger celebrities might just be more accepting of it.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like he probably looks even more poorly upon it.
Yeah, and it seemed like we all had a great time, and it really seemed like George had a great time, and having a great time interacting with people.
Yeah.
And of course, that's where we got that video we showed earlier. That's where that took place, was at said Castle Ward event.
All right, so real quick, a couple shout outs, and then we'll return with a couple more stories, and then the story of Titancon, and the end of the episode is coming. So, first of all, let's give a shout out to our queens of love and beauty. From the depths of Flea Bottom, Lord Ken of House Hammer is declared for Queen Carrie, Fire of the North, who recovered Dark Sister from beyond the wall. Excellent. And a Laurel of Glory in the name of love to Bud of House Beresford, Knight of Tolkien and Arbiter of Scotch, from Sandy the Dragon, blood of Queen Daenerys and Lady of Jameson. Also, thanks to our Blood Rider patrons, who are Vorsaki, wielder of a Valyrian steel Arak with a dragonbone hilt, Kohokohi, called Sunpiercer, wielder of a dragonbone bow, and Kokavo the Tamer, wielder of the wildfire whip Gehenna. And also, this time, we shout out our Northern champions. Certain patron levels get you recurring shout-outs from time to time in scripted episodes and live streams.
Northern champion seems fitting given the topic of this episode.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Right on. Jay Wilson, Winter's King. Sir Stephen, the Hammer of the North. Winter's King, Lord of the First Men. Lady Ardras, Mother of Wolves, wielder of the Valyrian steel Claymore Manticore. Sir Brian the Returned, Knight of the Last House, wielder of the Valyrian steel blade Red Song. Sir Kobe of House Stonesmith, words are wind, deeds are stone. Lady Cat Jones of the Big Pond, wielder of the Valyrian steel blade Ginger's Honor. Jake Snow, a.k.a. Jacob Ice Eyes, the bastard of the Last River. Lord Darren of House Rambler, the last hunt is ceaseless. Lady Bobby of House Mitchell. Bulweir the Purple of Heavenly Myth House Head Taurus. And Gandalf the White, Lord of House Seymour. And that's White. W-I-G-H-T. That's
My
an
people.
undead Gandalf. Yeah,
My
your
people.
people. Right on. Okay, so back to it. So upon leaving Castle Ward, the next interesting story comes upon us. So this gentleman, Matteo, we mentioned, a person of Sicilian origin who was a delight for us to hang out with.
I feel like he has Wyman Manderley energy.
Yes,
He
without
can
Wyman
like
Manderley's
command.
size.
He could do like a yeah. He's a compact man, but he can command like any kind of table or room very effortlessly. Like we at Titancon were walking around, and all of a sudden I see him sitting down with George R. R. Martin, just like blah 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 blah. I'm just he.
Well, the
he
guy
has
is.
that energy.
I attended his panel at TitanCon. Well, I'll briefly diverge from the funny story for the panel story, which is more interesting than funny. And his presentation was called Answering the Call. And he did it. It was a panel he did by himself. And unlike a lot of panelists who sit behind a table, he stood and did more like a lecture because he come from an academic background. He has a doctorate in fantasy literature studies.
Yeah, he's the president of the Martin Studies International Network.
How cool is that? And I can't possibly do his whole panel justice, but I will bring up one excellent point he made, which is that fantasy is the oldest genre. And I was like, well, people were like, okay, expand on that. He's
Remember at the Hugo Awards, they talked about that extensively.
Beowulf.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah. These are the oldest stories we know of.
Yeah, the Epic of Ramayana.
And these are they have monsters and heroes and this very common elements to fantasy stories. And for example, the novel is relatively new, right? Like a couple hundred years old, something like that as a concept. So it's really neat. And he points out that not only is it a great point to make, but it's in terms of the academic world, they're starting to come back around on that. Fantasy was denigrated as a genre for a long time, but that is changing, or has changed, and is continuing to change, and it's recognized as part of the academic sphere. It belongs. It's a major influence. It's just as much literature as anything else. Well, not all of it, of course, but most of it is. There are certain pulp writers that you wouldn't necessarily call literature. But anyway, so that was a wonderful presentation. Shout out to him for that. But let's talk about the humor side of this. So now that you have a picture of this man.
And an actual picture of this man.
Yeah, and an actual picture of this man. So I'll start here, and you guys pick up the story. We met him. He was friendly. We're talking, hanging out at this event at Castle Ward. And he tells us, well, so I had an interesting time getting here. Our friend Arthur, another person we met, great guy. He lives in Brazil. He bought a ticket to this event knowing that he probably couldn't go. He was trying to change his plane ticket, but then he wasn't able to change his plane ticket, so he gave his ticket to Matteo. So Matteo is scrambling to find a way to get to this event, being a traveler. He's not from Ireland. He didn't have a car. We rented a car, but not everybody did that, obviously. At first he's like trying to call taxis and Ubers, like, how can I get there? No one will take him.
It's about an hour. It's about an hour.
Yeah, it's like an hour away. So it's pretty far. So you can understand why a taxi wouldn't take him. Finally, he gets the idea in an hour. That's like you're going halfway across Ireland.
And it's not like they would get a ride back. It's
right.
just them, yeah.
Yeah, this isn't like, the U.S. where they could just find another passenger. So he gets this idea to call a pizza place.
Or he goes to Downpatrick. So he was able to get, part of the way down.
And then he goes to the pizza place, and he goes, could you deliver a pizza to this location?
To Castleward.
And they're like, yeah.
Sure.
And then he goes, well, can you deliver me with the pizza?
And they're like, oh, okay.
Sure.
I would imagine that most, like pretty much any American driver would be like, no. But there it is, Ireland, and people are more chill. They're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
why the hell not?
So they delivered him with the pizza, and we drove him home.
So he needed a ride from Castleward to say he was going to Belfast also. So he needed a ride to get to Belfast, and
but our car was packed.
At first he's like, can I get a ride with you guys? And at first I'm just like, no. And then we're like, wait, actually.
Yeah, maybe. Well, how much stuff do you have?
Yeah.
He's small. He ends up having like the tiniest, cutest little 2 bags.
Yeah, it was like a pink Barbie suitcase.
Yeah, it was like really tiny. It was cute.
I had the biggest suitcase that has ever was or will be.
I really think you're one of the biggest suitcases I've ever seen.
You could have put 3 of his suitcases in your suitcase.
More than 3, I think.
Honestly. Oh, no, like 5, at least 5.
Yeah, at least 5. So we managed easily to squeeze in his tiny suitcases, and then we just put him on my lap.
Yes, and there was some horror on the way home because this was, I let Aziz take the wheel for the first time.
My first time driving in Ireland at night.
Yeah, don't add budget rental cars with this story.
There's may have been some scraping of the hedges. Maybe. Do we have evidence of this to share?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
As you can see, this is on Aziz's dry side. This is after it's gone away a little bit.
Yeah, it's just mud. There was no actual damage to the vehicle.
Yeah. Whereas Christina at one point hit the side and knocked the mirror forward.
Yeah, the reason they invented those folding mirrors.
Foldings, but so she just
the pole just helped me fold the mirror.
It needed to be folded in. Yeah,
completely intentional.
So so that was cool. So we got we delivered him like a pizza.
Yeah, we delivered him back, and he can also do Mortal Kombat references.
Yes, he has an amazing voice acting ability.
And speaks
He's
a lot of
someone
languages.
that I personally would love to collaborate with in general, and also have on for voice acting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys will see.
He's gonna be famous. He's a star.
Yeah, he's a star.
He's a star.
He's very intelligent.
Confirmed.
I love his accent. I could listen to him talk all day, to be honest.
He made us dinner at Airbnb.
That's the kicker here. Of course, what do you do when a Sicilian man or Sicilian woman, either a Sicilian person, offers to cook you dinner at your Airbnb or your house or whatever? You say yes. So he was like, in exchange for this ride, I got to do this for you.
To be fair, I think if most people offered to cook me dinner at my Airbnb,
your nationality doesn't really matter. You're right.
Yeah, but still, it's going to be real good.
And it was. He made us. It was like pecorino and pancetta pasta and with some wine. Yeah, it's really good. Well played, sir. And it was the 3 of us and him and Aurel from Le Garde de Nuit. That's the French Night's Watch fandom site. They were represented there as well, and it was fun. Yeah, really good time.
Yeah, you can see we had a meal. We had a couple times where we got to sit. And Mateo, every time I came across the table where we were all sitting there, Mateo was sitting there. So I don't know how the tables got started. If like Mateo was sitting there and George was like, "This is who I must sit with." That's what I pictured.
Yeah, no, George was definitely jealous when we told him that he made us dinner at Airbnb. George was like, I wanted that.
So here's a picture you can see. Going from George clockwise, I suppose, is George, his assistant Sid, Arl, and myself, then Aziz, then Christina, then Mateo, then Martin, who was one of the extras we mentioned earlier, then Adam Whitehead, of course, of Wort Zone, who is Sir Adam Whitehead in The Winds of Winter.
Yep.
And Elio Garcia, the infamous, famous, lovely Elio who did The World of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, quite a nice table we had there.
Yeah, see, Elio's one of those people that I just met him and talked to him and thought he was really cool. And then I found out later that he wrote The World of Ice and Fire. And I was like, oh my God.
I have to say, one of the weirdest sights to me of the convention was I'm at a signing and I'm seeing Elio just ahead of me in the signing line to get something signed. I'm like, you wrote a book with him. You're in a signing line.
Yeah,
It's just very weird.
He was getting the Unseen Westeros book signed, which our friend we mentioned earlier, Javi Marcos, also got signed. It's a rare book of the
There
art.
was
from,
God, I can't remember her name now. I feel so bad, but one of the women who created it was there ahead of Elio in line.
Nice.
And that's part of why he got that
It was a
signed.
very star-studded signing line.
Yeah.
It's the same line we met Andy the Extra in again. Saw him there, and that's as in Sir Aberdale Strongbeard.
Yeah.
And all these other people. So yeah, it's like, wow, look at all the people in line here.
We also had a great panel.
Yeah, ourselves we did a panel. Yep, we weren't only spectators this time.
Yeah, here is a picture of us with Elio again, who was on the panel, and Adam Whitehead, and Patter, who was the guest of honor, the mutant, Toast Mutant, etc.
Yeah.
He's written a book called The Call, but he was our moderator.
Yeah, he was a great moderator, very funny, entertaining guy, and we discussed. The panel was called "Where Next for Westeros." And I keep thinking it was "What's Next for Westeros," but it was "Where Next for Westeros," I think.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Elio is a consultant for the pilot, the new show. So there's some things he couldn't reveal.
Yeah.
So
And
we were all
I
kind of
didn't
like,
actually
oh.
know he was a consultant.
Yeah,
until
we
then.
didn't know until the panel started that we're like, oh, well, you could have told us.
Really?
That,
Yeah.
but no. So he was almost certainly holding back some things.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
Like, I need there to be video of that, and for us to like look at.
Oh yeah, no,
look
I
at
was
his-
like, I was trying to read his facial expressions, frame by frame analysis.
Yes.
So that was really fun. That was a good time. The good panel went well, and very nice spot as well. Just the panel rooms were really nice.
Yeah, they were in like some of them were in like looked like you were in a theater.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like
It really
a
was like
movie
a theater.
Is
Like,
it
not a
amphitheater
theater,
seating,
amphitheater
right?
seating, yeah. They had a little bit of that at Worldcon too, and it was a little different than the rooms I'm used to for panels, and I really liked that type of seating.
So we also, well, I'm the only one who did the photo shoot with them, but they had two of the direwolves there, and I paid the £10 gladly
Yeah, I'm
to
putting a
pet.
picture.
The real direwolves, they were in the show.
This is
Yeah.
actual summer.
They're a little old now.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a picture of Aziz.
Greywind on screen right, or screen left, my right. So the one I'm more actively petting, the one on the ground who looks a little sleepy, was Summer. And they're 9-year-old Northern Inuits, and they're like among the first of that breed born in Ireland because they're not native to Ireland. And they were super sweet. They're good doggos, and it was wonderful to pet them. On the other side of things, it's a tradition for a lot of conventions to have what's called the dead dog party, which is the end of the convention. It's usually somewhat unofficial. Involve people finishing off whatever alcohol is left over very often, or whatever snacks, or just kind of whoever's still there. A lot of people have to leave. It's like a party for whoever's left. Of course, here they call it the Dead Direwolf Party. And that was fun, hanging out with the few people who were left. There was also the Feast of Ice and Fire that night, which included the wonderful Turlough Eccles on harp. Now,
I thought it was Turlock.
What did I just say?
Turlough.
No, Turlock. Yeah, what did I say? I said it wrong. My bad.
Yeah.
Turlock. So, great story about Turlock. We're standing outside the Hugo Losers party. I can't remember if it was before or after. It doesn't matter. After, okay. And this guy who's a little bit drunk is arm in arm with this other guy who's a little bit drunk, and they're just like...
They're just happy. They just look ecstatic. Their night is made.
And everybody's like, well, what's up with these guys? They're drawing a crowd almost, because their happiness is infectious. So we're like, what's going on? I want to know what they're happy about. And one Turlock says, I'm named Turlock. I've never met another guy named Turlock, and this guy is named Turlock. So they're just like having a Turlock love fest.
Picture me at a convention and I meet someone else named Ashaya. I feel like I would be about as happy as those two fellows were.
Well, you
right
did.
there.
You had that experience at Dragon Con. You met Aziz and Ashaya.
Oh,
Actually.
this is a perfect.
Oh, here we go.
this.
Let's jump ahead to Dragon Con.
Okay, here's a little example. This is at the North Remembers How to Party party. Here we go.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And yep, there's Aziz and I dancing at the party. Don't we? Aren't we such, perfectly adequate dancers.
Yes, so what you're actually seeing is Brian Edelon and Christina cosplaying as History of Westeros. Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yes.
That was a big surprise. Now, how did that come about, Christina?
Well, all right, this is the redacted version of the story.
Yes, there's some
yeah, there's like dark
not
tape. Yeah, it's like Area 51 for the full story. But Ashea actually, I don't know, like way back when, I wanted all the black milk clothing, but I was too poor in college when it all came out. And so Ashea was like, we had this talk when we first met about black milk, the black milk line. And I've been like trying to procure pieces. And so I got one and I got it sent to Ashea's house when I was gone. Like we were out and
That's what
yeah, that was the one we
we
bought in Dublin. I bought it and I was like, I got it sent to your house. So I opened it up at a party full of people and I put it on because I wasn't sure about the size, and I put it on, and then I had like my Drogon leggings on.
And I have those same leggings.
Yeah, and she has those, and I know Ashea now because I spent like 2.5 weeks with you. It's like
and time
so
at Con of Thrones and the
Yeah.
Ice and Fire Con.
Yes, I know, right? You can't get rid of me. So my friend Jasmine in the room had an Ariel wig, and so we put it on, and then we started playing your intro song, and I started just dancing to it, and I'm like, I'm Ashea now, and then I thought, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we like cosplayed them at the North Remembers party? So we decided, so Brian was a champ and decided to go as Aziz to my Ashea, and we cost them.
Yeah, so Brian would just go, I'm Aziz.
Yes.
Valar reread it.
I have some observations.
And now to Ashea for the quote. It's just killing me. I mean, the first night they did it, I just like got a flurry of messages that were like, here's a photo, here's a video. Like the first photo that I saw, I'm like trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. I'm like, I think she's cosplaying as me, but that can't be it. And so then I get a video, and it becomes more and more clear.
Actually, it's the sign, History of Westeros YouTube.
Yeah,
I'm like,
eventually they
okay,
made that.
there's no doubt now.
I was running around, subscribe.
Best advertising ever.
Yeah, it's already doubled our subscription.
Yeah.
Our subscribers.
Thank you.
So that was awesome. So, but back to
Ireland
for a minute. Yeah. So there are basically the last thing we did was go to the Game of Thrones touring exhibit.
For you.
Right, that's
Yes,
true. You guys, I was
we'll get
sick
into
one day.
that.
I loved it. Yeah.
There were, I guess I should name the other filming locations that I
Yeah.
didn't mention too. You guys went to Dragonstone.
Yes, which was an amazing. So out of all of them, I would say my favorite was Dragonstone. So I did the hike with Avril and Matt, Aziz and Ashea. We're not up for the hike.
That was our
day.
panel day, yeah.
It was our panel day. I wasn't going to wake up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, we went up really early and had so much fun on the cliffs.
I also got all three of us got sick with a cold.
Yes.
Yeah, completely different time.
Yes, we
Some of my
did.
Here we
favorite
go.
stuff
We
on
got
the
a
trip.
little video here.
Yeah, here's one of some sheep. And now here's a video of another Drogon scene. It is so hard for me not to just laugh and laugh and laugh whenever I watch those videos of Christina flapping and flapping around. There's more that I could have shared, but we only have so much time.
Yeah, and Matt was a great Jon Snow, I do have to say.
Yeah.
Because when you watch it, he's like looking into the sky and this, obviously I'm a great dragon.
It's just like Kit Harington.
Definitely a great dragon.
Yeah, I'm the best Drogon I've ever seen. You can hire me. I will come wake you up. I will come be your party Drogon.
So the rope bridge that was in Game of Thrones was inspired by a spot called Larry Bane, aka Karika Reed, and we were there. That was really fun. I did some more mountain goating, and we got a lot of photos of that. It's not directly related to filming, so we didn't put any shots in this video, but highly recommend it. Also, we went to Ballantoy, which is the site of Pike. That doesn't really look like Pike because they stripped. Well, it does in a lot of ways. They stripped out the
We went
human
on a
element.
very nice day too.
Yeah, it wasn't as gray.
Yeah,
but
it
it's
was
beautiful.
A lovely day.
Yeah, really beautiful spot. You can come right up to the river or the ocean, and I put my hand in it, and the water is crystal clear. There's like kelp and little miniature crabs and shrimp. It's really nice. On the Monday before we returned, so after TitanCon, Ashea and Christina went to the Shadow Baby Cave, which is called the Cushionen Caves.
Here's a nice photo of me in the Shadow Baby Cave.
Being pure Moher Sandra.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was really beautiful in there. It was, as you can see in the picture, like it's green even inside the caves.
Yeah, that was my second favorite. I think after
Fairhead, after Dragonstone Cliff.
Yeah, that one was really screen accurate where you're like, okay, they didn't have to CGI much. Like this is exactly what it looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the Cushionen Caves. Yeah, Shadow Baby Caves. I also really liked Inch Abbey, to be honest, like just the castle, the ruined castle where Robb was crowned. I particularly liked all the castles because of just how ancient they are. I mean, the cliff faces are old and all, but I've seen a lot of cliff faces, and I've seen no ancient castles prior to this trip.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're a castle girl. I'm a cliff girl. Call me if you're going to the call Drogon if you're going to the cliffs.
With the cliffs is that I grew up in Hawaii, and there are cliffs like that everywhere. Like it's very actually, I felt very much at home when we were on the coastal road of Ireland. Like just driving along the coast, cliff faces everywhere. It's very similar to Hawaii in a lot of ways. It even had some nice sand beaches. I expected it to be more pure rocky beaches, but there was a good variety.
We also went to the King's Road.
Yeah, the King's Road.
It was a little difficult to get a good picture of the King's Road.
It was very crowded that day.
It's called Dark Hedges, and these trees are just amazing. And we got a little miniature video from here, didn't we? A little footage of some creepy dude in a tree.
Yeah, Aziz is not the best blower.
I'm not going to get Tormund's nickname, Tormund Hornblower, Horn Pooter, or Horn Farter, something
No,
like that.
that is my horn, and a lot of people have tried to blow into it and have been thoroughly embarrassed in front of groups of people. It's a great way.
That horn is old.
Including Alt-Shift-X.
Yes, Alt-Shift-X, Azor Hype, Aziz, me,
lots of people.
Drogon.
Jinx is the person who's blown that horn the best from her
Jinx
first try.
Yes.
Well.
First try, she just blew it out of the park.
Yeah. I was really surprised. Yeah.
Some people have horn skills and some people make farting sounds.
Yeah.
Those are the only two kinds of people
That horn,
there are.
by the way, is what, 114, 115?
Yeah, it was from 1904. I got it at an antique market, and I got it, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to troll all my friends with this.
Which, as we've described, that's American ancient.
Yes.
114.
It is.
It's not Irish ancient. But so we also passed by Carnlock Harbor, which is Bravos.
Yeah, or Shay and I did. We saw it from the car.
Right.
We didn't want to get out. We were like, oh, cool, I see it.
We also saw a variety of the Game of Thrones doors at some of these locations.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. Okay, so during the filming of the King's Road scenes on this Dark Hedges area, or maybe during or just before or just after, I'm not sure exactly, lightning knocked down one of the trees. And they took that tree and carved it, split it up, and made 8 doors out of it. And these doors are spread out throughout Ireland. And they're beautiful. They're carved. One of them is this wonderful carving of Drogon. And they're just on these pubs and stuff. You
yeah,
just,
I
you
think-
could just stumble
It's like to
upon
the
it.
toilets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Go
think this
through-
season I saw 2 and you saw 3. Isn't
Yeah,
that
I
right,
saw
Christine?
3.
Yeah. Whereas I saw you guys saw we each saw 2 stained glass, but I saw a different 2 than you guys did.
Okay. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
6
So
of those
there's
stained
6 of
glass
the state-
exhibits.
yeah, so we
And
didn't
I think
even
8
see
of the
all.
doors.
No, there's 10 doors.
10 doors. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all throughout
The
Northern
tree was
Ireland.
big.
Yeah.
Really, really big. Okay, so then the final basically sightseeing thing we did. It was the last thing, the touring
Well, you
exhibition, right?
did,
Oh yeah, and
remember?
then you guys went to the Shadow Big
we
Cave.
went to the
Anyway,
cave and we went to eat and saw a door basically.
Yeah.
We went to the
Right.
cave and we're like, we thought we would go to Bravos and then we were like, let's not. And we went to a castle that wasn't in Game of Thrones, Carrickfergus.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I wanted to see another castle. Really,
Right.
I was
Yeah.
done with cliffs and harbors. Like I like harbors and cliffs, but I was well done at that point.
Yes.
So the Game of Thrones touring exhibition is a really interesting thing because it was another just pure a piece of luck for us that there was so much to do. The fact that TitanCon and Worldcon were next to each other in close by cities, that George was going to be at both of those events, and Castle
Ward, yeah.
and that the actual world touring Game of Thrones exhibit was in Belfast during this, and
Perfect.
it's moving. I think it leaves Belfast about 5 days from now. Today is September 3rd.
Highly recommended. They had like the map pieces, the scrolls, and we did
They had
the
these cool dragon skulls. I'll put a
yes,
picture
they
up
had the
here.
dragon skulls.
There's a
We're not inundating you with pictures from the exhibition here because honestly, there's a lot.
yeah.
out
Go to our
there.
Instagram
Go to our
stories.
Yeah.
stories.
There's the stone
We're gonna have-
direwolves, the
yeah.
stone Starks, and the crypts. There's an exhibit where you can pretend you're climbing the wall
Yeah,
with
I
the
like
rope.
that. Where you can
Yeah,
put
that
your
was
face in the hall of faces.
There's
you know.
that you can put your face in the Hall of Fame. That was really fun. You can
Yeah.
put your own little screen image
Oh,
there.
we did funny faces, of course.
Yeah, and there was
silly-looking
like a
ones.
full set of Unsullied gear, several Unsullied gear, a bunch of different dresses.
Yeah,
from
no,
different-
for the fashionistas, they
Ooh.
had the white winter coat. They had Marjorie's wedding dress. They had a lot of
Ygritte's
Yeah.
outfit. I mean, they
Yes.
had all.
Oh,
the
yeah, they had
full
the Lord of
rattle
Bones.
shirts.
Yeah,
they had
Yeah.
Khal Drogo's arak and knives. There's a long claw like standing on a pedestal that you can kind of pose with.
yeah. They had Jamie's hand.
Yeah,
They-
Jamie's
We
hand was
found out
there.
there
And
were
these are like a lot
7
of the-
hands made. Seven
of
hands.
them. Wow.
Yeah.
I really liked. They had this map of Westeros. I mean, big surprise. I liked the map, but it was this map of Westeros on the wall that was animated. So it had like lights shining around that you could see different events like the dragons flying around Dragonstone when Daenerys got there, and the White Walkers traveling down south. Anyways, it was a very interesting little thing. I
And
thought.
like a lot of museums, it has like an audio guide, like a little recorder you can
Oh
carry
yeah, I
around.
forgot you guys had your audio guide.
And it was really good.
Yeah,
It
that was
like,
good.
It was narrated by the head like costume guy.
Well,
Oh.
and they had
Or-
Michelle
yeah,
Clapton
yeah.
in it, so she
I
did
did not get the audio guide, and I forgot to even ask you guys about
Yeah,
it.
there was a lot. Well, that's how I found out that there were 7-ish Jamie's hands made. They went into great detail on Marjorie's wedding dress and all of the symbolism there, and like how, gosh, like the thorns were made of steel to like represent Tyrell's kind of like rising to power, and gosh, they had Jamie and Cersei's dresses. They had a lot of the dresses or costumes from the purple wedding, and so they had like Cersei's, dark color was to be kind of like her mourning, and like everything has so much symbolism, and I'm really into that. So I liked.
Yeah, so
love
check
the
it,
clothes.
check the schedule, look where the touring exhibition is going, and hopefully it comes somewhere near you. You could spend hours in there, and
Yeah.
plus it's not only is it narrated with the audio guide, but the lighting and the music in there. I mean, it's an experience. It's not just like a museum. It's actually, it's
yeah,
just
and
really
our
well
coffee
done.
even had a dire wolf.
Stark Dire Wolf coffee at the little kiosks there.
Yeah.
That was really nice. It's like, oh, look at this. It's a coffee. It's a mocha coffee with the mocha
Yeah.
was in dire wolf shape. It was really nice.
You can't bring it in though.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, poor Aziz and Christina, they got their drinks, and then the exit, because we were there a little bit early, and the exhibit opened, and they're just like, you can't bring that in here.
Yeah, we were smart to get there early. We got in there because it started to really fill up.
No,
we
yeah,
kind of had
we
it
were
to
the
ourselves.
earliest slot. We
Yeah.
could be, and we got like the early bird special. But yeah, as
Yeah.
I started to get towards the end, of the exhibit. More and more people were showing up, and I was getting more and more stressed. I hate that feeling where you want to take pictures of something or experience an exhibit, and there's just, you feel like you're making people wait, or they're in the way, so you're waiting. It's just, I was very glad to go extremely early.
Yeah.
Yes. We
So
stomped through that.
we had, first of all, shout out to Lady Dillsdale. Super chat says, welcome home from the most beautiful trip, all you lovelies. Thank you, Christina. We appreciate it. Good to hear from you.
Oh, yes, and that is not a mistake that he said that. This is another
Different Christina, yeah.
Yes. I was like, I'm not home though. I have not gone home. My family doesn't know where I am.
We'll close out with a few more anecdotes from talking to George and a couple of things from Dragon Con. We didn't talk about Dragon Con much. There wasn't a whole lot of A Song of Ice and Fire stuff there. So, most of our content was from the Ireland stuff. But we will still mention it.
Shout out to me. I have a lot of Expanse content that I did press for Dragon Con with Kyle, Azor Hype.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of content and footage that we're going to be releasing over on his channel.
Yeah, definitely.
Vlogs, and I did an interview with Holden and Amos from the Expanse, Stephen Strait and Wes Chatham. So anyways, this is my plug, which is that I have a lot to talk about at Dragon Con. And I will be talking about it on a different channel.
Yep, so keep an eye out for that. Follow Azora Hype on social media
follow
to share.
Follow me on Twitter, at Mirany's Not, and you'll be kept up to date.
It'll be posted in our Facebook group as well, so there's lots of places to make sure you're on top of that. So when we were having lunch with George the one day, he noticed my shirt, this shirt. That's why I'm wearing it today. He wanted to see the bottom. Yes, it's my Zoidberg shirt.
Yes,
it says
it's House Zoidberg. We do not
He wanted to see the motto, and I held it up, and I got to say, you're bad and you should feel bad.
Yeah, he really liked that.
Yeah, he did like my shirt. That was fun.
I get props for it.
It's true because
I both bought it for Aziz, and I dressed him for the day.
Yeah, she lays out his clothes every day. I can't confirm.
He got
Just
my
kidding.
approval.
Yeah, I was like, "Is this shirt okay?" And she's like, "Yeah."
I was like, "He'll like it because it's a mashup with Futurama, and of course he likes Futurama because how could he not?"
Yeah, because people like Futurama. You're not. Yeah,
if
you don't like Futurama,
if you're a nerd, like you're pretty likely to know your Futurama a bit.
So that was really cool. But, so quite a long time ago, speaking of Q&As with George, and of course this wasn't a Q&A again, this was lunch. But we have, of course, attended a lot of Q&As. You guys who have been following History of Westeros for a long time know that not only do we go to Q&As with intent, but we have strategy for asking questions. We've developed methodology for the right way to ask questions, the right type of questions to ask, to make sure they get answered, to make sure he doesn't wander off the topic, to make sure
it has to be concise and succinct. You don't want to give him any room for leeway. You just have to be as short
to corner him.
Yeah.
So one of those questions I asked a long time back was, what color is Vhagar? That's a very straightforward question, right? It's hard to wiggle out of that one. But he did, because he said, oh, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned that before. He couldn't remember, but he didn't want to say the wrong thing. But of course, we all knew at the time, he had not given Vhagar's color.
So, cut to our little dinner with George, at which Aziz excuses himself to go to the bathroom.
I'm gone for 5 seconds. And sends me a message. I'm like, why are you messaging me in the toilet? I just left.
And I'm like, we're talking about the color of Vhagar.
And I'm like, there's no chance I can just stop and get back out there. I got to finish, I'm like, damn it.
And so in the
FaceTime me from the stall.
So we're all talking about this, and I don't know how it came up. It's a conversation Adam Whitehead and Elio are part of it, and they know their stuff too.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, like, to George, what color is Vhagar, and George seems very confident, like he's like, I'm pretty sure it's in the books, and you can tell Elio also like knows that it's not there, but isn't trying to be rude, like, no, we don't know. And I'm certainly not going to be like, no, we're confident we do not know. And so George calls his assistant T over, and we think that he's saying that she's going to decide what color Vhagar is.
T,
we're like,
decide what color Vhagar is.
And we were like cracking jokes, and he calls her over, and he's like, so your new task is going to be, you have to comb over all the books, every bit of material, and find out what color Vhagar is for these people. And we're all like, we know. But we're still talking, like debating what color it would be. And George says, and here's a little illustration from Mallory Sandrickson. He goes, Vhagar is pale. Okay, it's pale. It could mean many things about a dragon. They could be pale red. They could be just pale, like a white colored, gray. In general, we have heard Vhagar referred to as hoary, so we've wondered if that means white. But we also know Vhagar and
It's
Visenya
been to
made
Bone Town. It's from Bone Town.
We also know
Confirmed.
Vhagar and Visenya, when they flew past the moon, they turned it red. So it seemed like a red.
Reddish. Yeah.
Basically, we don't know, but George definitely said Vhagar is pale.
Yeah.
With kind of a question marky thing.
So that's a good segue into T, who also happened to download several episodes of History of Westeros, which hopefully she's listened to by now. But if not, I'll message her and say, hey, what'd you think? But it'd be awesome for one of George's assistants to know our content, or at least have more awareness of us. That's great. But she also led us all in this beautiful moment, which we got on video.
Here it is.
And she never wanted to leave, never wanted to leave, never wanted to leave, never wanted to.
Okay. What
How
a
about
lovely
that?
moment there. You can see T, the dark-haired woman, exactly next to George.
Yeah, and she... I just saw Steven Stark's comment, Aziz does not blow from earlier about the horns. So yeah, so that was really fun, singing for George. He people didn't, we saw his assistants fend off many would-be, hey, I'm going to ask him about season 8. And they're like, no, don't do that. But this moment of season 8 was relived in person, and that was nice. And George did mention, he's like, I only didn't write very much of that song.
Yeah, he said that at the end. He's like, I wrote like 2 lines of that at most.
Which is also a notable thing, because
Yes.
we didn't actually know how much he provided material for that wasn't in the books for that scene. And it was actually one of the potential questions we might have asked of George. We have a running document with questions that we might want to ask him, given the chance. You want to just always have something to ask.
Yeah.
But now we know.
Also, super chat from Avril. Thank you, Avril. Stayed up to relive Drogon's day out. Thanks for a great live stream, y'all. Well, thank you, Avril.
Drogon's day out.
Avril was one of the trip MVPs because she is from Ireland and lives there. And
I thought it was a weird phrasing, because the trip MVPs, and she's Christina's Lady Triple. She is a trip a MVP.
Yes.
And of course, having a local is super valuable when you're in an unfamiliar place. So that was really nice.
She confirmed that Christina's crack is mighty.
Yes.
Yes, crack.
Oh, gosh.
CRAIC. They say that in Ireland, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like vibe.
Yeah,
but...
I had to deduce that after asking a girl question for hours about how to use.
I met a girl, Steph, and she ended up going with us sightseeing one day, and she taught us all sorts of neat things about Irish slang, and she took me out sightseeing like around the city in Belfast too, and I learned more about the history. And we taught her American slang too, of course. And she also made us feel better about Christina's driving.
It was a slang exchange, and yes, definitely. So that was great. Yeah, that was really fun. So we've just got a few minutes left here. Let's skip ahead just a brief little. Look, another super chat popped up from Will Moss. Hey, sounds like it was awesome. Gutted I couldn't get out to TitanCon in the end, but glad you had such a great one. Sword of the mid-afternoon out. Yes, well, it was too bad we couldn't see you, but we're glad that you could get to see all of our coverage. We hope we covered it pretty well for y'all. Like we try to do for everything, we try to be thorough. So a little bit about Dragon Con. Like I said, Shaya's got some Expanse stuff that'll be on Azora Hype's channel, and we hope you all tune in for that if you're fans of the Expanse, because we're big fans of the Expanse over here. And we'd love to see that fandom doing well. And of course, it's connected to the Song of Ice and Fire fandom. One of the 2 authors of The Expanse is Ty Frank. Earlier, we mentioned George's machine, his DOS WordStar computer.
And we mentioned his assistants, T. Yeah. Ty was also an assistant.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Well, I just like the idea of T and Ty.
T and Ty, yes. I was going to say Ty is the one who set up that DOS WordStar machine for George originally. So, The Expanse and Game of Thrones have that connection, and it's very cool. So DragonCon here in Atlanta, every year, Labor Day weekend, like we said earlier, it's kind of stole Worldcon's weekend, which is too bad, but it's our local con. And I've watched it grow from a few thousand people to, it was about 80,000 this year. It used to be
85,000.
85,000.
The official numbers came out.
So every year it gets bigger, and with maybe with very little exception, and it's really just huge. It used to be one hotel in downtown Atlanta. Now it takes over 7 of them. And wow. So it's highly recommended, even for non-Game of Thrones reasons. It covers basically every nerd geek fandom there is in some way or another. Super chat from Brian Edelon, $10. We're out of Diet Dr. Pepper. He is just off screen here. So yes, we will buy more Diet Dr. Pepper with that. And Brian, of course, gets a shout out for being part of this crew that was big in being part of making having a Game of Thrones presence at DragonCon, which is, it's...
You need to be done streaming, Aziz, based on that sentence.
Yeah. So shout out to Chloe, as in Chloe Ketchum of Girls Gone Canon, and Tara of the Geeky Area and Ice and Fire Con. Chloe's also an Ice and Fire Con organizer. And Elena, who helped with the North Remembers party. Also Emmett Booth, of a.k.a. Poor Quentin, was there. And it was great to see him. And the North Remembers Party is, or North Remembers How to Party is what it's called. And they had an Iron Throne there. And it's a recurring event.
Josh's Iron Throne,
yes.
Doppelraver cosplay.
Josh, a.k.a. a man who is dressed up as Aegon the Unworthy.
Daddy.
And many other cool things.
Daddy.
One of my daddies.
Yeah, she was, as Shiera Seastar. Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the great meta moments, I wish we had a photo of this, but I just didn't get it, was this Iron Throne people were waiting to take pictures on. You just line up to take photos on the Iron Throne. There were so many Dannys waiting in line for the Iron Throne. It was so meta. I'm just like, there's a quote. I need to come up with the quote for this. Makes this into a meme.
That would have been a great picture. You'll have another chance. There'll be another line of Dannys for the Iron Throne.
And for people who attended Con of Thrones or saw any of the coverage of it through photos, you will appreciate this moment. There was a miniature costume contest during the party. It was mostly just a dance, event, hanging out, music, socializing. But there was a miniature costume contest, some really good entrants. The winner, Little Bear, as in the Lyanna Mormont cosplayer, 9 years old at Con of Thrones, who captured pretty much everyone's heart. Captured DragonCon. She conquered Con of Thrones, and then she moved on to a bigger convention and conquered it as well.
Gosh.
And she gave the crowd into the mic a "Here We Stand" that just everyone. I've never cheered so hard.
So adorable.
So that was really cool. She's gonna clearly she loves conventions for the rest of her life now. Talk formative experience. And so shout out to Gina, her mother, who was a big community organizer in Nashville, organizing Ball at the Wall and other things. So that's great. We're looking forward to that in October. Check out our Facebook page for details on that. It's at the Halloween weekend.
I'll be there too.
Yeah. So last thing is the
We really can't shake her.
I know. Sorry.
Last thing for this episode is the Looney Theories panel, which is one of the recurring Game of Thrones A Song of Ice and Fire events at DragonCon, which is cool because, like I said, there's not a big Game of Thrones A Song of Ice and Fire presence there. No thanks to me, because hey, I live in Atlanta and I've never tried to do any DragonCon panels. I don't want to really, because panels can be early in the day. And I like to go to DragonCon to hang out with my friends. And I don't
honestly,
want to get there
DragonCon's
early.
Also just a really big party con.
Yeah, it is a party con, and I don't really want to be told, hey, you got to be here at 10 for this panel. So I've never signed up for panels. However, that changed. So I'm sitting there in line, where a bunch of us are gathering, waiting for this panel. It's going to be fun. It's a panel that people drink on, like actual panelists drink. And it's supposed to be silly and fun. Looney Theories panel. And so I'm sitting there, and Tara comes by and is like, "Oh, hey, Aziz, I see you there. Chloe is sick. She's usually on this panel. She's got the con crud. Yeah, it strikes. It just does that. Can't blame anyone for getting the con crud. 85,000 people. I mean, there's germs, right? So they're like, you want to join this panel? It was 20 minutes before the panel, so I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll jump on. And luckily, shout out to Maester Monthly, because at Con of Thrones, they did a panel on the worst theories ever posted to Reddit. So I had recently heard some loony theories. So I picked one of theirs that they had read off there and ran with it. I went with the dragon poop is dragon glass theory, which is perfect for the Looney Theories panel. Other Looney theories were that Podrick Payne is actually Podrick Dane.
Should be Dodrick Dane.
Dodrick Dane.
Oh gosh. I can feel Brian fuming from across the room.
Other theories such as Melisandre and Ghost are siblings.
Like all of these are Brian's. He will tell you anytime.
AKA Aegon the Unworthy is Ghost's grandfather. Also, the idea that the Bolton, that the Bolton theory / the Boltons are vampire, that kind of thing. Variations on that theme. Drogon brings Dany to Valyria for resurrection. She becomes the fire lich witch thing. Or my favorite, this one was new for me, that two variations on this theory. One, that the Crannogmen are fake. That they're not. There's very few of them. They just talk about the fact that there's lots of them. How many of you actually ever seen it once? Good point.
Do they exist?
Do they actually exist? But the other theory, the alternate version of this theory.
Yeah, is that they're just Floridians, people from Florida.
The Crannogmen are Floridians. Yeah.
Florida man.
Yeah, so Florida man or the Crannogmen. Yeah, you can see immediately how that fits, right? You don't even have to wonder. Now, the crowd pitched in with some theories, too, including Mallory Sanrixian brought up time-traveling fetus, that Dany and Drogo are the father of Tyrion. Yeah, look into that one if you need to. The Eldritch Apocalypse was brought up. That's one of Emmett's theories. It's not so loony, but, parts of it are pretty epic. And we talked a bit about that and how the show may have affected that theory. Septa Lemore is Joanna Lannister was brought up as a theory. That's
by Adrian, the fabulous Adrian.
That's a fun one. And then a challenger emerged. The man named who goes by the Darioth, aka Matt Foran, who you may have seen very recently.
Also, Robb Stark.
Yes, Robb Stark, the King of the
Robb
North.
Stark.
He is Robb Stark. He is book Robb Stark with his height and his red hair.
Red hair
and
and beard. Yeah, I know.
So some of y'all may have seen this viral short video of several Tormunds ogling a Brienne at DragonCon. Well, this was his idea, and he's the first Tormund in that
Oh, I should have got that video too.
We should have gotten that's a good idea. Oh, well.
That would have been too nice. But no, it's got you can find it.
Yeah, it's like
got over 1 million views
it's
now.
Super viral.
Really
yeah.
good.
Reddit, YouTube, social media, you can find it's really easy to find. But he said, I have been reviewing your theories, and I have notes.
I have notes.
I have notes.
Holding up his phone.
That's what no panelist wants to hear. I have notes. And so he took some of our theories to task.
Yeah.
But
and then the fight continued at the after party.
Yeah, so we had some fisticuffs, verbal fisticuffs, but it was all in good fun. And, I think that's about it. We went a little over, but it was good. We had a lot of good stories to tell.
Thing.
Okay, yeah.
At the beginning of our trip,
the final anecdotes.
At the beginning of our trip, we went out to dinner with Avril and Matt and some other people. Michael, notably, at this gaming arcade, Token, in Dublin. And there was this table, and it had like My Little Ponies in it, and like some Thai money, and a condom, and dollar bills. A business card. It was just weird stuff, and we were baffled by it for a while, and then we realized that there must be a way to put stuff in this table. So Michael finds how you put things in the table, and he like flicks in first our business card, as you can see in this picture, and then his flyer. So you can see our table with our cards. So if you're ever in Dublin and you go to Token, you might 1, check out our card, and 2, want to throw in something of your own. And I just really like the concept of someone coming to that restaurant and being just as baffled by now it has a bunch of Game of Thrones stuff. It's just weird. That was it.
So good. Also, I see a question here from Misty306. She asked what other authors we met either at Worldcon or TitanCon. Well, Pat Rothfuss was there. I didn't meet him, but he was walking around, and a lot of our other friends met him.
Other people met him, and we were hanging out at a bar one night, and we found him Whitehead, and Patrick Rothfuss walks in, and he just does like a general wave to the room, like, I know that I'm Patrick Rothfuss, and I just need to make a wave. And now I can go do my thing because everyone notices when I enter a room.
And Brandon Sanderson was at DragonCon, but I didn't see him either.
I saw him. I didn't
Nice.
like go say anything to him, but he was in the vendor's room signing stuff because he's a real down to earth
Yeah.
guy who still just sits in the vendor's room at his table and signs stuff for people who just want to walk on in.
There were a lot of authors, but we, it's at a convention. You just don't have time for everything. So I'm sure we're forgetting some names, but yeah.
I know there was an author you really wanted to see, Christina, and you just didn't, right?
No.
You did?
Yeah, I saw her on a panel.
Okay.
B. Schwab.
Which author was that?
B. Schwab.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
yeah.
So, did you have any other stories? Did we forget anything?
I think that's good.
Cool. All right. Well, let's say thanks to all the listeners who came up to us and introduced themselves, rather, to us. That was very cool to meet y'all. It was really nice. Some of you wanted to meet, and we weren't able to for various reasons. Either we weren't in Dublin long enough, or y'all couldn't get to the con. Worldcon actually sold out, which is not typical. So that was probably why a few of y'all couldn't come, so that's too bad. So maybe y'all could come to some American cons, and we'll see you there. Obviously, thanks to Michael Klarfeld again. Thanks to the Brotherhood Without Banners people that we ran into, Pod and Pebble and Dave and
Only
Sihan
Dave.
and,
Only Dave.
Only
yes.
Dave. Bill and Sarah, Elio and Linda, of course. That's the Westeros.org is the internet home of the BWB, really. And Adam Whitehead, of course. Warren Dudson, thanks, buddy. Javi, Oriol and Lagarde de Nuit and Mateo and Rhea and T and Sid and Turlock and hey, other Turlock too. Why not? Matt,
Turlock squared.
McSorley and Simon and Abril and Mangu and Sophian and Brian E. and Tara and Jasmine and Brian and Chloe and Emmett and Kyle, Azora Hype and San Rixian and Jinx and Rita of the Coppermane and all the other people we got to see at one or other of the cons. Community continues to be extremely generous to us, continues to give us opportunities and love, and we want to give that back as much as we can. So we hope y'all enjoyed this journey through our journey. And that, again, like I said, wraps up con season for us. We'll be back to just regular content for the foreseeable future. Thanks for being our guest, Christina, on the trip and on this podcast.
Yes, you can't get rid of me.
And what do we do? Where do people follow you?
Oh, on Twitter, Lady X Triple, or A Game of Cons on Instagram.
Yeah, right on. Cool. So do that, and you'll see a lot more evidence of shenanigans from all over Ireland and Dragon Con.
So many shenanigans.
So many. The shenanigans are off the charts.
I suppose I'll mention here, I don't normally mention my Instagram account, but I do have a whole set of like 3 Instagram stories, 4 of Dragon Con and all that. I'm at Ashea Tara.
All right.
Not
Tara.
Not Tara. You can remember because Tara goes by Tara, and I go by Tara.
Okay, some Patreon shout-outs to end our episode. Thanks to the mysterious BR, Hand of the King. Thanks to Lord Stephen Stark, titles. Hand of Queen Ashea, who is known as the best. Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog, and Warden of the West. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Quebec the Unfrozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. Kelly McMath, or Lady Kelly McMath of Covington, is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. Lord James Tuttle is King of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, Commander of the Royal Fleet, consisting of the Narrow Fleet, led by Flagship Caraxes, and the Bloodstone Fleet, led by Flagship Prince Daemon. He has been upgrading his ships to deal with the extreme winds that come from the cliffs of Mohair and the Dragonstone Cliffs after seeing our videos. King Beyond the Wall, Sidney Jesse, the Fallborn, Lord of Bluespring and the Haunted Forest, wields a dagger of Dragonglass and the Valyrian steel blade Red Frost, and he has been busy looking at the maps we posted, looking for new sites to pillage. Whoops, we guess we shouldn't have done that.
Bonetown.
Lady Sarah Connolly, the Willful, wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure, is one of Jenny's patrons. Our White Walkers include First Walker Tanaman, wielder of Blue Sister. Went north of the wall in search of the most refreshing brew where the mountains are always blue. Turned White Walker, but still in search for the elusive Blue Mountains. Can't rest until I complete my quest. A ray of flint of the mountain flints, captured by the Weeper, only to be raised in the valley of the Milkwater, blue eyes and golden memories. Alexander Greyblood is first of the first men, now crowned in ice, called Silence Bringer, Wood Blinder, and the Snow of Night, wielder of the ice-forged greatsword Pale Frost. Our small council includes Lord Daniel the Sneaky Russian, Master of Ships, Grand Maester Via James, Lord Benjen of House Hornwood, Master of Laws, Lord Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield, Master of Coin, Lord Johann of House Orkos, called Shadowhawk, Master of Whisperers. Lords and ladies in their castles include Lady Direliz of Castle Naki, the Alpha Patron. That means the first patron ever. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. That means the person who pushed us over our second ever patron milestone. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Breadfort. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is Leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is Wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is Guardian Ranger of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood, Dual Wielder of Valyrian Short Swords Glorious Morning and Little Light Wise. Sharpshooter of the Werewood and Ironwood Laminated Longbow, Todd Von Oben. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is First Forester of the Old Gods, sworn to House Ironwerewood. Listen for the silence. Lady Lana Kelly of Wolf Island is Protectress of the Steelhold. Casey Stark is of House Acres. Lady Kay of House Archer is Lady of Earthdog Hall, Huntress of the Wolfswood and Guardian of Maddie Squirrel's Bane, the Mighty Direweenie. Lady Raywin of House Billsdane is the Star Spear. Peter Rivers is the Pale Dragon and heir to Bloodraven. Lady Carlin Carey of Castle Stonesharp, whose horse is shod in Valyrian steel, is Lady Rider of the Rising Hills. Lord Brendan Lannister is the Blood Lion, ruler of Castle Everroar. Our King's Justice is Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian steel blade Fate. Our Queenside Council is... Do you want to read it or should I?
I do not have it open.
Bloody Ben Blackwood, Master of Whisperers. Rebea Stareyes, Lady of Waves and Mistress of Ships, Captain of the Iron Shadowcat. In the shadows we bear our claws. Katrin the Wise of House Trondheim is Master of Coin. Grand Maester Elizabeth is middle daughter of Lyanna Mormont, First Lady to forge both the Silver and Valyrian Steel Link. Laura Boros is Lady of Infinity and Master of Laws. Our Kingsguard is led by Lord Commander Miriamar, backed up by Sir Glennon of House Lian, called Lioncloak, longest tenured white sword. Sir Dean the White is Knight of the Black Star. Sir Jord of House Pepsi is the Beverage Knight. Gregor Snow called Snowbear is a Bastard of Winterfell. Sir Jen Seaworth is Knight of the Southern Snows. And Lisa, Water Witch of Dorne. Our Queensguard is led by Lord Captain Commander Haima Helmet, the Sellsword Sentinel, backed up by Alexander of House Atreides from the seat of Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Becca the Bard, Songbird of the North. Sir Rambo, Knight of House Gannon, First Blood. Sir Leon, by the way, there's, did you guys see there's a Last Blood movie for Rambo? It's actually called Last Blood, and Sylvester Stallone is in it. It's actually, they're doing some sort of...
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a little side trivia for you there. Okay. Amazing. I'm like, really? This isn't a comedy? Last Blood? Wow.
It's the first blood and the last, it seems.
Yeah, apparently. Sir Leon of House Walker is wielder of the twin Valyrian steel blades Fire and Ice and the Werewood bow Rain. Amber the Adamant is the Knight of the Mist and Mother of Squids. The Wintry Wolverine motto, we finish what you begin. Our Beard Guard is led by Lord Commander George the Golden, backed up by Sir Joshua Oakhart the White Oak, Lady Rita of the Coppermane, the Unbound Dance the Fervor. Sir Jeff, Warden of the AC, is wielder of Triad. The multifaceted beard of Platinum Red and Brown motto, Stay Frosty. Sir Tim Corgyle is Mad Boy of the Western Desert. And a few new patrons here and there to throw out for fun. We got Maester Lucius of the Alluvia, Archmaester Austin, whose ring and rod and mask are made of oily black stone.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a cool one, right? We've got Bailey Bloodaxe, the Warrior's Chosen. We've got, who else is new? We've got Fair Cat, the Provider, called Lady Bakes. Sir Jorgen of Bloodstone, the Night Knight, as in Night. Yes. And we also have our members of the History of Westeros Night's Watch, Lord Commander Benjen Umber, the Silent Giant, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Greatsword Winter's Kiss. First Builder Maegor Snow, a.k.a. Maegor the Cool, the Fire in the Snow. First Steward Sir Jurion of the Torrentine, called Pale Wind. First Ranger Sir Source Delica of House Gramercy. And any other new people? Let's see. I got Sir Slorp Flowers, the Bloody Bastard of Bitterbridge. Sir Catherine, the Colorful of House Amelia, Vivid Living. Prince Epion Skywalker, the Summer Demon, Prince of the Summer Isles. And let's see. Also, a couple others. Sir Joanna of House Hayes, called Red Haze. Lady Colleen the Escalator, she who hits first. And Lady Kalara the Bard, first Beacon of Voices. Many other unnamed supporters who prefer to remain anonymous. Thanks to you as well. And thanks to anyone who likes and shares and tells people about History of Westeros.
Can I just say, I would have loved for you to just make Christina say all of those names.
No. I was like, please don't call on me.
If you're in class and you're like, teacher, stay back.
Way harder than Irish wristwatch.
Yeah, oh God.
Oh, I was out of the room when she did it. How did she do?
It was hard. She said
was
wrist
too.
wash like most people.
Gosh.
Okay.
She took her time, but it's still
Yeah.
challenging. Celtic timepiece is the other thing. Irish wristwatch, Celtic timepiece.
I'm not doing it.
It's a little easier to say Celtic
You
timepiece.
can't make me.
Okay, everybody. Thanks again. And you know what's next. Thanks to Christina. Thanks to Ashea. Hey, thanks to Brian E. too for reminding us that we're out of Diet Dr. Pepper. And
We'll be getting more now.
we will. Valar, reread us, everyone.